Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Gamma Ray Report. My name is Rose Gamma Ray. I'm an aerospace engineering professional, lifelong science enthusiast, and complete space nerd. And my goal on this channel is simple, and it's to take fascinating science and explain it in a way that's accessible, engaging, and hopefully makes you look at the world and the universe a little bit differently. First of all, thank you all so much for joining me tonight. I'm really excited to have all of you here with me, and I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in and asking questions, participating in the chat, and just being a part of this fantastic community. So thank you all so much. So, tonight we're actually going to be investigating the Bermuda Triangle. Now, chances are most of you here have heard about the Bermuda Triangle. Maybe you grew up watching documentaries about it. Maybe you've seen some TV specials claiming that, ships and airplanes have vanished without a trace. Maybe you've heard, stories about compasses spinning mysteriously and mysterious lights, or even just theories involving like extraterrestrials and, Atlantis maybe. And for decades, the Bermuda Triangle has been one of the most famous unexplained places on Earth. And depending on who you ask, it's either one of the most dangerous places on the planet, or maybe it's one of the biggest myths ever created. So tonight, we're actually going to be doing something a little different, and we're going to be investigating the evidence together, because that's what science is really all about. It's about collecting evidence, asking good questions, testing out different explanations, and being willing to change our mind if the facts start to point somewhere unexpected. And that's exactly what we're all going to do tonight. We're going to examine some of the most famous disappearances and some of the culprits and suspects that could have contributed to those disappearances. But before we get into any of that, I would like to introduce someone very special, very talented, and somewhat of an unexplained mystery herself, my co-host, Goldie Gamari. Hi, Goldie. How are you?
Aruba, Jamaica, ooh, I wanna take ya. Bermuda, Bahama, come on, pretty mama. Key Largo, Montego, baby, why don't we go? Jamaica off the Florida Keys.
I love that song. Perfectly fitting.
We'll
We're
take
going
it
to
fast
the
and then we'll take it slow. That's where we wanna go. Back to Kokomo, Bermuda, Bahama. Anyways, that's all I know about this. Anyways, so hello, hi everyone. Rose, I'm so
Hi.
excited to be here.
How are you, Goldie?
I'm doing good. I'm doing okay. Really excited to be here and just kind of take like a little bit of a break from all the political stuff. Love your channel, love everything you're doing. So I'm
Thank
in vacation mode right now because I
Yeah.
feel like we're taking like an all-inclusive vacation to Bermuda, right?
Yes. I hope you have your bags packed. I hope you got your drink of choice ready.
Yeah, I got my bubbly, mango flavored for the tropical flavors, and
that's
got my
perfectly on
sunglasses
brand.
to deal with my $20 sunglasses. By the way, these are not like brand names. It's literally just like this sunglass, like random sunglasses. But we're ready to go. We're ready to go to Bermuda.
I love it. I must say, I think that was one of my favorite entrances of yours ever. Like that was pretty iconic. I feel like you should always have like an intro song when you kind of join.
I'll think about that. I'll
Yeah.
think about that.
Okay, so Bermuda Triangle, Goldie. What's like the first thing that comes to mind when you like think of Bermuda Triangle?
Amelia Earhart.
Okay, okay, Amelia Earhart. Interesting.
Am I wrong? Because didn't she like, because she was going around the world, didn't she like, I mean, I could be wrong about this, but like I think of disappearing ships, um I think of tropical vacations, and I think Amelia Earhart.
Yeah, so I think Amelia Earhart was she disappeared in the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, okay,
So it was
so that wasn't the Bermuda Triangle. Okay,
it
so I was
wasn't.
wrong about that one, guys. So I just want to give a disclaimer: the hashtag Goldie is always right does not apply on the Gamma Ray Report, because Goldie is always right when it comes to geopolitics, but when it comes to science, Goldie is usually always wrong. Rose is always right on the Gamma Ray Report. But yeah, I think of like disappearing ships, and I think of like all these places, and there's like this weird vortex or something, and it's like, again, like I haven't looked into this. I'm just going off of like memory, but there's like some sort of magnetism thing or some sort of vortex thing.
Ooh,
And
okay, okay.
about magnets, so I think magnets have something to do with this, but I don't know. So that's what I think of.
Okay.
I think of disappearing ships.
Okay, I love that. So, the way I've set up tonight's live stream is a little bit different from how I normally do it. It's more of like an investigation. So we're going to be talking about our like victims through some case files, and we're going to be talking about some of those disappearances, and then we're going to be looking at our different potential suspects of, who the suspects are, and then we're going to collect all of the evidence and then come up with a conclusion at the end of all of that. So, look, I even have a fun little magnifying glass.
I was just thinking, like, I was like, do I have a magnifying glass? No, I don't. But
My
you do. Oh, wait,
eyelids.
we have to zoom in on you. Look at that. Everyone's watching you.
Oh, I forgot. Sorry, I forgot I'm live for a second. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, guys, so
Um,
this is like the silliness that my sister and I, we engage in behind the scenes. So
yeah.
that's so cool. I love the magnifying glass.
I know. It's what I'm going to use during tonight's investigation. And yeah, so by the end of tonight, we'll come back together. We'll weigh in on all of the evidence and see whether we can solve one of the greatest, mysteries out there. And we'll also discuss whether some questions still remain unanswered. And yeah, I think it's going to be fun. So grab a drink, guys, settle in. And if you've got theories about the Bermuda Triangle, definitely don't keep them to yourself. I want to hear about them. Put them in the chat. And yeah, as we're going through tonight's investigation, let me know in the chat, what do you think is responsible for the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle?
Rose, so I know, you usually start off your shows with like your classic thing. I'm just worried if you actually start off with that, is it going to get lost? And like, are we at risk of like, like this class, this field trip to the Bermuda Triangle? Is it at risk of getting lost if we fly there?
Why do you think we have permission slips? It's in the fine print of the permission slip. So I guys, I hope you've all read the fine print. You're signing up for this. Anything could happen on the Magic School plane, but like it is kind of magic, so there is, protective elements associated with it. But I mean, you never know. You never know. But
yeah. Sorry, just a really quick question. So why are y'all last names spelled different? That's because Rose is adopted. That's what.
Yeah, and you remind me of it every day, Goldie. That's so funny. I mean, I don't know if that was like a legit question or not, but gamma ray is like a play on words for gamari. Like gamma radiation, gamma ray, gamari.
Because I mean, you could technically pronounce, Gamara, you could pronounce it gamma ray, I guess. So that's basically just a play on words.
Potato, right?
Potato,
potato.
See, she's the potato, I'm the potato. That's the difference. Potato.
That's so funny. Okay, so guys, with that, grab your permission slips, put on your seatbelts, because we are about to board the Magic School plane, and we're going to take a trip to the Bermuda Triangle. So guys, be careful. It's going to be a bumpy ride tonight. And This is my amazing Q400. So most of you know Q400 was the plane that I worked on when I was in aerospace engineering. It's one of my favorites. Great little plane. And, you know, this one's a magic one. So I hope you guys are all ready.
Rose, I saw this comment and I had to share it with you.
Oh, no. Okay, forge it. You know, I did that once as a child. I think I had like a test that I needed signed, and I forgot to get it signed. I got perfect on it. It was like a dictation of like spelling, and I got perfect. And like the teacher was like, "Okay, make sure you take this home and get your parents' signature on it." And I completely forgot, and I didn't want to get in trouble for forgetting, so I just forged my mom's signature on my perfect test. You know, that's fine. You do what you must. You do
She
what you.
had a perfect score, but she was afraid of getting in trouble because she forgot to sign it, even though it was literally a perfect score. Yeah, this is what I mean when I say that my sister is the smart one in the family. This is what I'm talking about. Is Mom in the chat? Yes, she is. She
Yeah,
knows the
sorry,
story. She
Mom.
already knows
Sorry
the
about
story.
that. Too funny. Okay, so we're all detectives tonight, okay? And so detectives, um, every investigation starts at the scene of the crime. Before we could figure out why people disappear in the Bermuda Triangle, we first need to understand what exactly is the Bermuda Triangle. Like, what are we actually talking about when we talk about the Bermuda Triangle? So, we're going to get to our first diagram of tonight. And oh, guys, for anyone who wants to follow along with um, with tonight's diagrams and charts, I have my second companion pack published with all of tonight's charts, graphics, maps, etc. And it's 18 pages long, and it includes all the fun stuff that we're going to go over tonight. And if you are a channel member, you get 60% off the companion pack. So if you are interested to follow along and want a copy of the graphics, feel free. Oh, I lost Goldie. Sorry.
Oh no!
Okay, you're back.
I got lost, guys. I got lost in the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle took me. Oh no!
You are our first disappearance, Goldie.
Victim.
Okay, so when most people imagine the Bermuda Triangle, they think it's like this clearly marked area in the ocean, but like obviously it's not. So there's no clear markings or borders that exist when it comes to the Bermuda Triangle. It's not even like an internationally recognized area or location. So you're not going to find the Bermuda Triangle in any sort of nautical charts or maps. And there's like certainly no sign floating in the ocean that says like welcome to the Bermuda Triangle like when you enter like the boundaries. And like if you were flying over it on a plane, your GPS wouldn't suddenly announce that you're entering the zone. So instead, the Bermuda Triangle is a region that people have collectively agreed is this location associated with these unusual disappearances. And the most descriptions connect these three locations, which roughly form this triangle. So the first position is Miami, Florida. And then you have San Juan, Puerto Rico down here. And then Bermuda up here, and then collectively that forms this triangle in essence. So like when you connect all of those 3 points, you get this enormous region that's covering somewhere between 500,000 to 1.5 million square miles depending on which source you're reading. So that's already our first clue because there are different estimates and approximations of what this area actually consists of. So some people think it's like a small location within this area. Some people think it's like this whole area. Some people think it's like one specific region. So because there's no universally accepted definition of where this location actually is. Um, Different authors draw slightly different boundaries, and some triangles are much larger and some triangles are much smaller. So this is essentially like the location of the crime scene of our Bermuda Triangle. Make sense so far, Goldie?
I actually have one question. So, given that, the Bermuda Triangle is between sort of this area between Miami, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda, why is it called the Bermuda Triangle and not like, I don't know, the Florida Triangle or the Puerto Rico or the Bahamas Triangle or something else? I don't know if you know the answer to that. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, I actually don't know.
If like
Maybe,
if maybe yeah, if maybe like we could look it up afterwards because
yeah, that's a great
like
question.
so I actually like for some reason again like science knowledge is not the greatest, but I thought that it was called the Bermuda Triangle because the triangle was like around Bermuda, and I thought like Bermuda was in the middle of it. But
Oh,
Bermuda
interesting.
is just like one point of
Yeah,
the triangle. So
just yeah, well, we can look it up in a bit, but
afterwards,
like
yeah.
just speculation on my part. I feel like because maybe like if I was to guess, Bermuda is kind of just like the most in the middle of nowhere, like in the ocean. So maybe it's like the most mysterious in a way because of that. But yeah, we can certainly look that up in a bit. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at is actually a maritime marine traffic map. Okay, so this is a live map of different marine and commercial vessels. So one thing I want us to realize next is that the Bermuda Triangle is actually within one of the busiest stretches of ocean found anywhere on the planet. Every single day, you have commercial airliners that fly between North America, Central America, South America, and Europe. You have cruise ships that are flying through these waters consistently. You have different cargo ships carrying everything from food to electronics to cars and fuel passing around this block. So let's zoom in on this area. So you have Florida, Miami, somewhere over here. You have San Juan over here. And then you have Bermuda over here. So this is our live triangle right now. So you have all of these ships currently within this area. Um, I always find these maps so cool just to like kind of track these ships. Goldie, is there any other location geographically you would like us to look at?
Yeah. Do you want me to do you want to open that can of worms right now? Because I
Not
could
really.
totally be like, yeah, let's go look at the Strait of Hormuz and see what's happening there right now. But
Yeah. But let's stay in this region for now. Maybe for a commercial break.
you brought this on yourself.
I
You
know
brought
that
this
was
on
me. That was my fault. But yeah, so as you can see, obviously there's a lot of activity here. And there is also even like private sailboats that cross these waters. You have fishing vessels that operate here. The US Navy trains here. You have US Coast Guards that patrol here. And millions of people safely travel through this region every single year. And that's another incredibly important clue because if this area were truly some sort of uniquely dangerous place, we would be expecting modern transportation to avoid it. But clearly, that's not what happens. And instead, people are continuing to use these routes because they're some of the most efficient shipping and aviation corridors within the Atlantic. So,
Rose, that's a really good point because like if this was like a very serious legitimate threat, insurance companies would have that as like a disclaimer, right? So that's like the legal nerd in me, right? So money talks, and if this was like a very serious threat, like a common thing, the insurance companies would have that as a disclaimer that like anyone that travels, through, let's say, the Bermuda Triangle, their insurance is null and void or something while they're within that area or something.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And we'll briefly touch on like a little bit of like insurance stuff later. But yeah, I love when you bring out the legalese and the legal nerd. It's super, super relevant. So kudos to you on that. But like right now, obviously, we have two seemingly contradictory facts. On one hand, this region has developed one of the world's most mysterious reputations. And then on the other hand, it's also one of the busiest and most routinely traveled places on the ocean on Earth. And so those two facts are going to become very important later on in our investigation. So now that we know where the Bermuda Triangle actually is, or at least where most people agree it is roughly, our next question is going to be if
Sorry,
this.
quick question about that. So when you say most people, it reminds me about your live stream where we were speaking about Pluto, and most people were agreeing one thing or another, and there was like an organization. So when you say most people, who are you referring to? Is there like an international body or a group or something, or it's just
No.
just this is just one of those things where it's just kind of the collective of random
Yeah,
people?
honestly, Goldie, it's more of like a media thing. Like it's more just like
Okay.
different authors or different reporters or different like investigators who have looked at this region previously, who have these different definitions of what this location is. And because this triangle is not defined by any sort of international body, that's why you have some of these conflicting claims. What did you see? What's so funny?
I'm sorry, guys. Okay, I'll stop asking questions.
No,
I'm sorry.
it's fine. I like your questions.
No,
You
it's just
know,
people are
yeah,
teasing me. It's
you're
okay.
you're that person in class who like always raises their hand and like asks annoying questions, but like there's always, that one kid in class who like might have had the same question but is too shy to ask. So that's that's totally fine.
I was, when I was younger, I mean, not anymore, but when I was younger, I was totally the teacher's pet. Like, I would sit
Oh,
in the
were
front
you?
row and like raise my hand. And then, by the time I got to university, I was like the rebel. Like, I basically sat in the back and like I barely studied and I still got like 90-95% on everything. So,
Oh,
but that
same
was
thing.
political science. It's easy to, political science is easy. It's not like a real thing like, science, like what you did.
No, no. I mean, all education is good education, and its own form of special thing. Okay, so
Special thing.
okay, moving on. So where was I? Okay, the next question we're going to explore is if this isn't an officially recognized place, then how did it actually become one of the most famous mysteries on Earth? And to answer that question, we're actually going to travel back in time around 500 years to one of the most famous voyages in history. Can anyone guess what I'm talking about? If anyone has the companion pack, you'll know.
Christopher Columbus.
Yes, you got it,
I,
Goldie.
and I and I don't have the companion pack yet. I mean, I'm gonna download it, but I was just guessing.
Um, okay. Okay, so we have our next graphic, which is Goldie. You got it. You're so smart. So, okay, so we need to go back to 1492 when Christopher Columbus made his first voyage across the Atlantic. And according to his entries in his journal, Columbus and his crew were reporting seeing some unusual things. And one of the most commonly repeated stories is that his compass appeared to be behaving a little bit strangely here. And another thing that they reported is that some of the crew members were seeing these like mysterious lights like in the distance. And so like both of these things were like very, very odd and very strange for like 500 years ago. And so let's briefly talk about these two unusual reports. So number one, with the compass, today, obviously, and I say obviously because we had our magnetic show a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, we literally learned that magnets keep us alive, and then when like the magnetic field goes wonky, like that could lead to the end of human civilization. So the fact that like now you're telling us that Christopher Columbus's magnet was acting weird, like I'm thinking of
Reportedly.
like at the end of times with like the magnet live stream you had like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so guys, if you want to learn about magnets and Earth magnetism, check out the live stream that we covered a few weeks back. You can see Goldie all scared again. We love when she gets like that. But one of the things we learned from that live stream is that today we know that compasses don't necessarily point to the geographical North Pole, but instead it points towards Earth's magnetic north. And those two are two different locations. And the angle between geographic north and magnetic north is known as magnetic declination. We don't need to get too much into that, but that's just what it's called. So that's just the difference between geographic north and magnetic north, called magnetic declination. We'll get into that a little bit more later when we talk about our suspects. And the amount of declination changes depending on where you are on Earth, because our planet's magnetic field is not perfectly aligned with its axis of rotation. So you have the globe that's rotating, in one way, and then the magnetic field is not perfectly aligned with that axis. So that's why it's constantly kind of changing. And this was not something that was understood in 1492 during Columbus's time. What's wrong with your face?
No, I'm just thinking about the magnets.
Oh my God.
I'm just traumatized.
You'll be fine.
Okay.
But yeah, like magnetic declination was not something that was understood during Columbus's time. And so like imagine you're like one of the world's greatest explorers and navigators in the 15th century, and you've been relying on your compass for like weeks and months, and all of a sudden it suddenly just doesn't point exactly where you expect it to. And without any sort of our modern understanding of Earth's magnetic field today, that could be deeply unsettling. And like, I'm sure they were all kind of freaking out on that boat. But today, like, we recognize that this isn't necessarily evidence of any sort of supernatural force. It was simply an observation of a natural phenomenon that science hadn't explained yet. So that's regarding unusual report number one.
You know what? You make a very good point there, because a lot of science, right? Or what I should, there's like a quote or something, I can't remember what it is, but it's like magic is basically science that hasn't been explained yet, right? Like a lot of things that we have today, like if we were gonna like for like my phone, right? If I was gonna show my phone to people from like 200 years ago, they would think this is like magic or something, right? The fact that like I can just push a button and speak to someone, right? So yeah, like a lot of magic is just science that hasn't been explained yet.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great point. And you could really say that for anything in science today, right? Like, even like something like dark matter, for instance. I'm not going to go into a different subject, but like anything we don't currently understand, it could just be like maybe 500 years from now, it'll be something that could be explained. Okay, so the next unusual report were the mysterious lights that were seen at sea. And again, there are several perfectly reasonable explanations about what this could have been. Some historians suggested that it could have been maybe distant fires that were lit by indigenous people on the islands that were just over the horizon, maybe. Other people have proposed maybe it could have been atmospheric phenomena, such as like a meteor crossing the night sky, or it could have even been something like bioluminescence, which is also very, very common. Like I see someone, veteran Hoffman, mysterious lights at sea is just bioluminescence. Yeah, could have totally been. And so for those of you who might not know what that is, bioluminescence is essentially the ability of a living organism to produce their own light through a chemical reaction in their bodies. So think like
anglerfish, where they have the little lighty thing,
yeah,
and then
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's like
the
deep, deep in
fish
the
get to
ocean.
them, and then they use the light to like eat the fish.
Yeah. I've always been super fascinated with anglerfish, but anglerfish wouldn't be like here. They would be like deep, deep in the ocean. But it could have been like jellyfish, like some kind of other kinds of fish have
I've
bioluminescence.
heard like plankton too sometimes.
Plankton, exactly.
Yeah, like bioluminescence.
Yeah, yeah. So they're able to generate the light themselves, which is very, very cool. So it could have been something like that, but there isn't enough evidence to say with certainty what they saw. But the important point here is that seeing something unusual doesn't automatically mean that something supernatural has happened. Just something to keep in mind, and that is a theme that you will notice throughout tonight's investigation. And if I have any like Gen Xers here who are like really fascinated with Bermuda Triangle and like feel like it is something supernatural, let me know in the chat. I feel like there's a specific era and age range that like really grew up with Bermuda Triangle, who like have these really strong feelings and thoughts about this, but we don't really hear about it in the news too often these days.
Well, I just want to say I'm literally on the cusp, right? I was born in 1985, so I'm on the cusp of like between millennials and Gen X. Like I'm considered an elder millennial because I pretty much know everything that like Gen Xers know, but whatever reason, like the 1985 is like the arbitrary divide. And like I'm totally like, like I think, maybe aliens, who knows? Like maybe this was an alien thing.
Maybe,
Just saying.
maybe.
So I'm kind of with the Gen Xers on this one.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so after this, so this happened in 1492, and for the next several centuries, there actually wasn't any real widespread belief that this region of the Atlantic was uniquely mysterious. This is just one of the first like reported instances of that. And then, over the next few hundred years, you had ships and explorers and merchants that crossed these waters. And, there were ships lost, but it was very normal at that time. And it wasn't different than anywhere else in the world. You had storms that occurred, you had accidents at sea. So there wasn't anything out of the ordinary for this particular area compared to any other place in the ocean. So the mystery itself didn't really begin with Columbus. The Bermuda Triangle, as we know it today, is actually largely a 20th century phenomenon. So we have to go back into the future a little bit.
You just said go back to the future.
Maybe I'm from the future.
No, but it's like it's reference to the movie Back to the Future.
That's funny. Okay. So we're gonna go through a bit of a timeline just to understand like why and how it might have become this this phenomenon that it is now. So the first major turning point came in 1950 when an Associated Press journalist named Edward Van Winkle Jones wrote an article discussing several of these unusual disappearances. And so he didn't invent the mystery himself, but he was one of the first people to kind of group some of these multiple instances together in like one single story. So you have him like starting to investigate and like write these stories in this Associated Press journal. And then 2 years later, in 1952, you had Fate magazine, which is another publication focused on like unusual phenomena, published this article specifically about sea mystery at our back door. So this article continued to generate the hype and expanded on some of the ideas that Edward Van Winkle Jones, oh, that's a mouthful, Edward Van Winkle Jones was talking about. And he started to like talk about something unusual that might be happening in the waters between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. And then individual incidents also were originally unrelated, but now they were starting to be collected into the single story. So you had different incidents that were happening during this time, kind of in this region, and no one was really like putting them together as like one cohesive narrative. But it is a very human thing for us to do, to start noticing different patterns, and like our brains naturally look for these patterns and connections. And so sometimes those patterns are actual things that happen and like are real patterns, but sometimes they could totally be coincidental. And like where science comes in is figuring out which is which. So are you actually seeing a real pattern, or is this something like cognitive bias, for example, where you might be thinking something might be happening because of this pattern that you're seeing, or is it just all in your head? And then the event that truly launched Bermuda Triangle into pop culture happened in 1974, when an author named Charles Berlitz published a book called The Bermuda Triangle, became international bestseller, millions of copies were sold all over the world, and it was also translated into like a variety of different languages. And this book essentially presented the Bermuda Triangle as one of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. And like he explored a lot of, extraordinary things like magnetic anomalies, Atlantis, extraterrestrials, time warps, and like, a variety of other like very interesting ideas. And it definitely was a very good book. Like it was a compelling read. A lot of people were like really into this book, but later on, it was found out that many researchers who revisited some of Charles Berlitz's claims found that some of these incidents were maybe exaggerated, maybe some details were omitted in some cases, and stories maybe even were repeated through historical records, and like it didn't really, the historical records didn't really support the stories. So
but he'd already made like his millions, right?
yeah, this guy was
Okay,
already
so
loaded,
Rose,
locked and
okay,
loaded.
Rose, business idea. Business idea. How about you and we come up with like the Persian Gulf Triangle or the Strait of Hormuz Triangle, and like we'll just like come up with like random stuff. We'll publish a book by, the Gamari sisters. It'll go viral. And then by the time everyone like discounts it, we've already sold the book and it's a bestseller. I
Oh my
think
God,
this is
so
like
funny.
you know what? Why reinvent the wheel? Why reinvent
Yeah,
the wheel when there's already like the strategy there? So I think we should work on like some sort of like the Persian Triangle or something.
the Persian Triangle. That's so funny.
Let's make it a thing. Let's make it a thing. The
Okay,
Persian Triangle.
I love it. Oh, look at what this person is saying. Nice stand, Goldie, says Michael.
Hey, hey, Americans! I'm just following you guys. This is what you guys did, so I'm just it's a good it's a good business plan, right? I mean, no one has to buy the book, but I'm just
I
saying.
love it. Okay, we'll talk about that offline. We'll take it offline, Goldie.
Okay, we'll take it offline. New business plan.
Okay, so we've talked about where the Bermuda Triangle is. We've looked at how the legend grew over time, over the past century, and we've seen how stories can kind of sometimes evolve over time. And so now we're at the point where we need to actually look at our evidence. Can you see my eye?
Wait. Let's.
Right. I feel like my lights are reflecting on it, but hold on.
I can still see your giant eye.
Okay.
Oh my
Guys,
god,
we need
that's
to
so
look
scary.
at the actual evidence rather than discussing, these vague stories about like ships disappearing. So we're actually going to examine some of the most famous disappearances related to, the Bermuda Triangle. And we're going to look at what happened, what we know with a high degree of confidence, what still remains uncertain. And this is important because each case kind of raises different questions. So, one of the most famous Bermuda Triangle disappearances is the aviation mystery of Flight 19. And so this happened in 1945 on December 5th. World War II had just ended. Guys, World War II, not World War 11. World War II had just ended a few months earlier. And the United States was conducting like routine trainings from their naval air station at Fort Lauderdale in Florida. And so the aircraft being used here is the Grumman TBM Avenger. And so they were torpedo bombers, and a torpedo bomber is a specific military aircraft specifically designed to attack enemy ships using aerial torpedoes. And so this was designed during the Second World War. They were very large, very rugged aircraft built to operate over the ocean. And each aircraft typically carried a crew of 3 people. You had a pilot, a radio man, and a gunner. And so we're going to watch a quick little video just on Flight 19. And guys, if you want any of these graphics and visuals, you can find them in my trusty companion pack.
And if you're a member, the companion pack is only like $4, which is like literally like cheaper than, you know, a cup of coffee from like Starbucks or something.
Okay, so we're not going to watch this whole video because this video is going to go into like the theories and stuff. We're only going to watch a couple of minutes because I want to go over the theories myself. This is just going to go over like, you know, what happened for Flight 19.
On December 5th, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers called Sign Flight 19 took off from Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on a routine 3-hour training mission. Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, who had amassed some 2,500 hours flying, in addition to the completion of a combat tour in the Pacific Theater during World War II, was the flight leader. The flight included both Navy and Marine airmen, with each Avenger, with one exception, carrying a standard 3-man crew. They were to take off at 1410 hours and navigate heading east to the Hens and Chicken Shoals for a training bombing exercise, then turn north towards Grand Bahama Island, and then head southwest, returning to Fort Lauderdale. Their flight plan was as follows. 1. Depart 26 degrees, 3 minutes north, and 80 degrees, 7 minutes west, and fly 91 degrees, distance 56 miles to Hen and Chicken Shoals to conduct low-level bombing. After bombing, continue on course 91 degrees for 67 miles, fly course 346 degrees, distance 73 miles, and then fly course 241 degrees, distance 120 miles, then returning to U.S. Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The flight reached the target area at 14:30 and dropped their practice bombs and then banked on their new heading. Suddenly, an unexpected heavy cloud cover and high winds and rain blew in. What has survived from the radio transmission records, it would appear that Taylor became convinced that his Avenger's compass was malfunctioning.
You're on mute.
Goldie, you okay?
No, the compass. You literally taught us that when compasses start malfunctioning, that means the world is coming to an end. Oh my God,
that's not what I said.
It would appear that Taylor...
But okay, actually, let me just say something because we're on this point. Compass problems in general for this specific story are one of the most frequently cited aspects of like what happened to Flight 19. And like at that time, aircraft heavily relied on magnetic compasses, which again, like indicates magnetic north rather than true north. So a malfunctioning compass produces unstable or inaccurate readings, and investigators actually never have really been able to determine whether Taylor's compasses were actually malfunctioning or whether, you know, he himself had lost confidence in them. So it could have been either.
I also find it, Rose, and maybe you can speak about this a little bit. I find it absolutely wild that, like, you know, in the 1940s, for example, there was no GPS, right? Whereas today, all of the aircraft literally use GPS, right? Like the aircraft you've worked on and, you know, built and designed and stuff, right? So But yeah, like back in like the 1940s, there was no like GPS or like computer screen where like you could see where you are on the map, and pilots literally had to just rely on compasses and whatever to
Yeah,
just get to where they're going, especially if they're crossing the Atlantic or whatever.
exactly. Yeah. And like GPS was invented like 30, 40 years after this, like in the 70s, and didn't fully become operational until later in the 90s. And like during World War II, pilots did rely heavily on magnetic compasses and like other ways of identifying your location. And we're going to touch briefly on some of these strategies. And like a lot of the times those, like if you're disoriented spatially, you might be thinking you're going in one direction, but like you could be going in the complete opposite direction if you've like completely lost your spatial orientation. So um this is especially difficult when you're over the ocean because there's no frame of reference. Everything looks exactly the same. Like on land, you have landmarks, you have like ways of like knowing, okay, like this is north because this like mountain is here or like whatever. In the ocean, it all looks the same. So you have no frame of reference. So, that's
Unless at nighttime, is it? Well, that's why like it's like a lot of like ancient civilizations traveled during the night because they could use the stars in the sky as like a frame of reference.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So like celestial navigation is definitely a useful tool that a lot of, people back in the day used to use.
Wow.
What has survived from the radio transmission records, it would appear that Taylor became convinced that his Avenger's compass was malfunctioning and that his planes had been flying in the wrong direction. Another pilot flying in the area near the Florida coast, Navy flight instructor Lieutenant Robert F. Cox, received patrol's transmissions. He informed the Naval Air Station of the situation and then responded to Flight 19 asking if they needed assistance. Taylor responded, "Both my compasses are out and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down." Another transmission heard was one of the pilots in Flight 19 stating, "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn." Then the situation became more confusing. Ground control knew that he had made the last turn on his heading, but it appeared that Taylor believed that his flight had drifted hundreds of miles off course and that he was around the Florida Keys. One prevailing belief was that Taylor, who had just returned to the area, was confusing the Bahama Islands with the Keys, but still dead reckoning would have assisted him and the flight. Generally, pilots in the area, if they became lost, were instructed to head due west toward the east coast, but it appeared that Taylor believed that they were over the Gulf of Mexico because it is suspected that he turned the flight northeast, which would take them farther out into open ocean. Some of his pilots seemed.
So Goldie, like Taylor reported that he believed he was over the Florida Keys, but most investigators now think he was actually over the Bahamas. And this matters because of that spatial orientation that we talked about, because the correct course of action at this point depends entirely on your location and where you think you are. So if you're over the Bahamas, flying west would take you back to Florida. If you're over the Keys, flying west takes you further into the Gulf of Mexico. So any sort of navigation error could explain why this flight was continuing away from land instead of towards it.
So sorry. So I'm pulling up like Google Maps here. Let me just share my screen really briefly, so that I can get like spatially oriented here because I'm kind of like a visual learner. So okay, so he thought he was where?
So he thought he was over the Florida Keys,
Okay, here.
but most people think he was actually over the Bahamas.
Okay, so when you're in the Florida Keys, if that's where you think you are, you're going to fly west. Sorry, you're going to fly east to get back to land. So he thought he was over the Florida Keys, which is why he was flying east, but people think that he was most likely in the Bahamas and he mistook that for the Florida Keys, so then he was flying east, which is terrifying because when you fly east, there's literally nothing there. So, Oh my gosh, if that's true, then that means he literally just flew until they ran out of gas and then just, oh my gosh, that's terrifying.
Yeah, so like some of that spatial navigation, spatial disorientation, without, GPS could really, put you in a rough spot.
Wow.
To have recognized that he was making a mistake, as over the radio the call was heard. It seemed to have would take them farther out into open ocean. Some of his pilots seemed to have recognized that he was making a mistake, as over the radio the call was heard, "Damn it, if we would just fly west, we would get home." Taylor turned around and headed west, but shortly after 1800 hours, he canceled the order and once again changed direction. He must have still believed that he was still in the Gulf of Mexico. Over the radio, he was heard, "We didn't go far enough east. We may as well just turn around and go east again." In the post-event investigation, it was believed that one Avenger broke formation and flew in a different direction, but most followed their commander's lead. Flight 19's transmissions soon became weaker as they flew farther out to sea. With their fuel almost exhausted, Taylor was again heard over the radio, "All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." This would apparently have been Taylor preparing Flight 19 to crash land in the ocean, and right afterward, Flight 19's radio communications ended. Search aircraft were sent to the area to locate the men. One inexplicable factor was why Flight 19 never engaged the rescue radio frequency or their ZBX receivers, their IFF, or identification friend or foe, which the pilots were instructed to do, which would have given them a signal beacon and could have led them towards the Navy's land-based radio towers. The only explanation was that they never heard that transmission. At any rate, they never acknowledged that they received it. At 1930 hours, 2 PBM Martin Mariner flying boats departed Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, this part is really interesting, Goldie.
On different flights.
So sorry, now you have like a rescue plane, like trying to go find them.
Hours, 2 PBM Martin Mariner flying boats departed Fort Lauderdale on different flight paths to cover a wider search area. One of these planes, PBM-5, Bureau number 59225, took off from Naval Air Station Banana River in Brevard County, Florida, at 1927 hours, carrying a crew of 13 rescue personnel. About 20 minutes later, that Mariner was tracking Flight 19's last known course correction, also disappeared from radar and lost radio transmission with NAS Fort Lauderdale. Now, with another aircraft missing, confusion reigned at NAS Fort Lauderdale. The following morning, before dawn, the Navy launched over 300 boats and ships to...
So now you have the rescue plane that's also disappeared, Goldie. And so, like, the disappearance of this aircraft is also often presented as evidence for something unusual happening within the Bermuda Triangle. But let's continue watching.
Start a wide search.
It's terrifying. So not only did Flight 19 go missing, but then the rescue plane also went missing.
Yeah, one of the 2 rescue planes.
One of the 2 rescue planes. Oh my gosh.
Pattern. The Martin Mariner, being prone to in-flight fires due to a faulty fuel tank and fuel line design, was believed to have possibly exploded. In fact, a passing merchant ship reported a fireball and then discovered an oil slick on the ocean surface. The search spanned 5 days, covering over 300,000 square miles of ocean without any trace of either the Marines, Navy pilots, or the Avengers. They just vanished, Navy Lieutenant David White later recalled. "We had hundreds of planes out looking, and we searched over land and water for days, and nobody ever found the bodies or any debris." As was standard practice, a Navy Board of Investigation was convened. The board concluded that, although Taylor might have confused the Bahamas for the Florida Keys after his compass malfunctioned, it could find no clear explanation for why Flight 19 had become so disoriented. The board's final report was that if all the aircraft had headed due west, they would have saved the air crews when they ditched, as all the aircraft had inflatable life rafts. The conclusion reached was that the loss to all aircraft were due to causes or reasons unknown.
Okay, so that's all we're going to watch from this video. So we're back to our case file. So this is our first victim, guys. But one thing I want to mention about the rescue aircraft, the PBM Mariner, which they mentioned in the video, so that also disappeared after takeoff. But unlike Flight 19, there is evidence suggesting that that rescue aircraft may have exploded shortly after departure. So one thing, Goldie, like this specific aircraft did, like it wasn't a very good airplane, and it had earned a reputation among crew members as like being a flying gas tank, and because fuel vapors could accumulate under certain conditions. So, it wasn't the first time that, it was kind of prone to these accidents. And so even a nearby ship reported seeing an explosion in that particular area shortly after that rescue plane departed. So while it's not absolutely proven, many historians do consider that an in-flight explosion was the most likely explanation for the loss of this rescue aircraft in particular. And that distinction is important when we talk about the Bermuda Triangle, because a lot of retellings of this story kind of lump those two things together and say, like, first you had Flight 19 missing, and then you had this rescue plane missing, and often like lump them together under the same identical mysterious circumstances. But some of the historical evidence suggests that they may have been entirely separate events. But yeah, like despite enormous search efforts, there was no confirmed wreckage from Flight 19, and it was never found. There was no definitive crash site. There was no surviving crew, and we never got a final explanation about what happened to Flight 19. And that's one of the reasons why this specific case remains so famous. So that's our first victim, guys.
I mean, that's like, imagine being like maybe a junior flight member, like one of the people who was like, we're going the wrong way, we have to turn back. But, because, military command and, all of that, they have to follow the person in charge. And so, like, imagine, oh my gosh, just like imagine the discipline that you must have and this is why, like, in my opinion, the US military is, one of the best militaries in the world, because imagine the discipline that you have to, follow, knowing that it's probably the wrong decision, but, it's just that discipline, military discipline. So, wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
wild.
Absolutely wild. So we have 14 airmen total that were lost during Flight 19, split between those 5 aircraft.
Sorry, quick commercial break, quick intermission, because I'm seeing a lot of people commenting in the chat. Yes, guys, there are boom booms happening in the Middle East, and I'm gonna talk about all of that tomorrow on Iran Revolution Live on my channel. So the boom booms are not going anywhere. But yes, the United States right now is currently boom booming the Durkas. I know, and I'm getting all the updates, and I will talk all about it tomorrow. Right now we're on our class field trip. We're on vacation to Bermuda, Bahama. Come on, baby mama.
I feel like I need a margarita when you sing that
I
song.
know, right? You know what? I have my mango flavored bubbly, which is like tropical. But yeah, this is science time.
Okay, so now we're ready to open our second case file, guys. So Flight 19 is typically the most famous aviation mystery associated with the Bermuda Triangle. But when it comes to the most famous maritime one, you have USS Cyclops. And even today, like a century later, almost. Like it remains one of the largest non-combat loss of life in the history of the US Navy. And so we're talking about a ship that's over 160 meters long, which is roughly the length of like 1.5 football fields, with over 300 people on board. So we had 309 crew and passenger on board this ship. And like, despite its size and despite the like number of people that were on board, and despite extensive searches that were associated with this, there was no confirmed wreckage, that was ever found. And it was just very, very mysterious. So this ship was commissioned in 1910. And it was a Proteus class collier, which is a type of ship designed specifically to transport fuel. And so originally, these ships were built to carry coal to different naval vessels operating around the world. And at the beginning of the 20th century, coal was still the primary fuel source for many warships. So colliers played a critical logistical role, and they were basically like these fuel trucks of the sea. And they supplied entire naval fleets across the world's oceans. And so the Cyclops itself was an enormous vessel for its time, and it displaced nearly 20,000 tons of fuel when it was fully loaded. And it was designed to carry extremely heavy cargo over very, very long distances. By 1918, which was during the First World War, this ship was actually assigned to a different mission, but equally important. So instead of carrying coal, which is what it was originally built for, the Cyclops was instead transporting manganese ore, which is a very strategically important element during World War I, because it was essentially used in steel production. So when you add manganese ore to steel, it improves its strength, its hardness, its resistance to wear. And so this was very important in times of war, because you needed it to, build your railway infrastructure, your military equipment, like your helmets, your artillery, etc. So it was very important when it came to infrastructure. And so according to historical records, this ship was loaded with approximately 10,000 tons of manganese ore before beginning its journey from Brazil to the north of Baltimore. So here's Brazil down here. And then it was intending to go to Baltimore. It had a stop in Barbados, and then it was bound to go to Baltimore, but it never made it there. But one thing I just want to point out here is that this specific detail of like the change in intent of what the purpose is built for is extremely important, because manganese ore is very, very dense, and it places enormous stress on a ship's hull if it's not loaded and distributed properly against the structural integrity of that ship. And we'll come back to that a little bit more later, but for now, we're simply noting it as an important piece of evidence. And we're going to watch another quick little video about the USS Cyclops.
Cyclops and wondered why no. Have you ever heard of the USS Cyclops and wondered why nobody has ever found it? I do not mean simply why it sank. The real question is, how does a 540-foot US Navy ship carrying 309 people simply vanish without leaving a single piece of wreckage? No distress signal, no debris, no bodies, nothing. Over 100 years later, the US Navy still has no answer. So why is the USS Cyclops still missing? It's not like nobody looked. Ships searched for the Cyclops immediately after it disappeared. The Navy launched a formal investigation. Clive Cussler, the adventure novelist who found dozens of famous wrecks, spent his own money searching for the Cyclops in 1983 and found nothing. Modern sonar expeditions have come up empty. And yet the Cyclops, one of the largest ships in the US Navy at the time, has simply never been found. As it turns out, there are some very specific reasons why finding the USS Cyclops is so difficult. Some of the obvious explanations for why it sank fall apart when you look at them properly. The USS Cyclops was a Proteus-class collier, a large cargo ship built to carry coal and supplies for the United States Navy. Cyclops was 540 feet long, and she was launched in Philadelphia in 1910. For her first 7 years, the Cyclops fueled warships across the Atlantic and the Caribbean. When the United States entered the First World War in 1917, the Cyclops was commissioned into naval service. In January 1918, the USS Cyclops left Norfolk, Virginia, carrying nearly 10,000 tons of coal bound for the US Navy Squadron in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The USS Cyclops arrived in Rio on January 28th, unloaded the coal, and was given a new cargo for the return journey, 11,000 tons of manganese ore used in the production of steel and ammunition. This was important wartime material. The USS Cyclops was loaded up and sent home. Before leaving Brazil, 2 problems were reported. The first was that the USS Cyclops was overloaded. Her waterline was sitting above the plimsoll mark. The line painted on it.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you said that the USS Cyclops was built and designed to transport coal, but here it was transporting manganese ore. Is the weight of, like, is manganese ore more dense than coal, and so does it weigh more per volume?
So manganese ore is definitely more dense than coal, but density is essentially how much mass is packed into a given volume. So manganese ore is more dense. So the same sized pile of manganese weighs a lot more than the same sized pile of something like coal. So when the US
kind of like 1 pound of feathers is much bigger than like 1 pound of coal, for example.
Yes, like they weigh the same, but like the density is different.
So let's say if the, so you know, again, I'm just assuming, but assuming, like, so let's say like the USS Cyclops is built to transport a certain volume of coal, right? Like it was built for that volume and that density and that mass, but now, like, in that same area, in that same volume, they're putting manganese ore, which is much heavier than coal. That could negatively impact the ship.
Yeah, so it's based on the concentration of the load. So the coal, even though, like, let's say you have 10,000 tons of coal and 10,000 tons of manganese, the 10,000 tons of coal would be more evenly distributed across the surface area that, you know, it's being loaded on. But the same weight of manganese ore would be a lot more concentrated in one specific area of the ship. So if it was not distributed properly, it could have placed an enormous amount of stress on like that particular area of the ship, which could have been the hull, and like damaged the internal structure of the ship.
Okay.
Great question, Goldie.
Thank you. See, I'm paying attention. I'm learning.
Great.
Her waterline was sitting above the plimsoll mark. The line painted on a ship's hull that indicates the maximum safe load. The second was that the starboard engine had a cracked cylinder and was completely inoperative. A survey board looked at the USS Cyclops and recommended she return to the United States for repairs rather than attempt an ocean crossing in that condition. The recommendation was noted. The USS Cyclops departed anyway. The USS Cyclops made one stop, an unscheduled call at Barbados on March 3rd, where port officials again noted the ship was sitting dangerously low in the water. The USS Cyclops.
So people are noticing like it's not sitting properly. Like people are pointing things out in terms of how it's, you know, supposed to be versus how it actually is.
took on some supplies and left Barbados on March 4th, headed for Baltimore, Maryland. The expected arrival date was March 13th. The last message anyone ever received from the USS Cyclops was a routine weather report. It said, "Weather well, all fair." The USS Cyclops never arrived in Baltimore. When the USS Cyclops failed to show up on March 13th, the Navy began making inquiries. Ships were sent to search the route between Barbados and Baltimore. The Navy searched for weeks. Other vessels in the area were contacted. No one had seen the Cyclops. No wreckage was found on the surface. No oil slick. No floating debris. No bodies. Nothing at all. On June 1st, 1918, the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Franklin D. Roosevelt, who would later become President of the United States, formally declared the USS Cyclops lost and all hands deceased.
Okay, so that's as much as we're going to watch from that video. But essentially, Goldie, at this point, we've discussed and looked closely at two different incidents that probably contributed a lot to what the Bermuda Triangle legend is. But if those were the only two disappearances that were ever reported in this region, like it's not something, we would be talking about today. So there was definitely a lot more. And what transformed this from a couple of isolated mysteries into this international phenomenon is the accumulation of many of these different incidents over decades. So before we begin our investigation, I'd like to quickly introduce some more case files just quickly, just to kind of set the stage and get everyone aligned before we dive into our suspects. Can you remove your screen?
It is already removed.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's literally not on the screen.
No, sorry. I meant something different, but it was my bad.
Why don't I just remove myself? I'm just going to get lost in the Bermuda.
Oh no, we lost you guys. Goldie, come back. Magnetic anomaly, aliens. Oh no.
It was the aliens, guys. The aliens took me.
Okay, so we have cases 3 to 6 on our evidence board. So the first one is January of 1948. So this is a few years after the Flight 19 incident now. So the Second World War has ended. Commercial air travel is expanding rapidly, and a British South American Airways aircraft called Star Tiger is flying from the Azores towards the Bermuda. And so this is a civilian aircraft, Goldie, and it was carrying passengers, 31 people on board, 25 passengers and 6 crew member. And so let me just zoom in here. So this is the one we're talking about, case file number 3. And so the weather during this flight was not ideal. There were strong headwinds, and because of those winds, the aircraft was flying at a relatively low altitude, only like a few thousand feet above the ocean, to avoid some of the stronger winds that were higher up. And as the aircraft was approaching Bermuda, there was radio communication that was becoming increasingly more limited, which is not unusual for this specific era. Like we're talking about like the late 40s here. But then everything just went silent. There was no distress call, there was no emergency transmission, and there was no confirmed wreckage, and there was no survivors. And so despite extensive searches involving like other ships and aircraft, there was no trace of anything that was ever found related to Star Tiger. And
so basically it was aliens then. It was the aliens that took them.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. But the official investigation ultimately concluded that there wasn't enough evidence to determine a definitive case. So that was the Star Tiger. And then just 1 year later, you have the Star Ariel. So now we're in 1949. This is another aircraft from the same airline, which is very interesting because it's the same kind of plane. It's the same airline, like wild. And once again, we're dealing with a civilian aircraft. This time it departed Bermuda and it was bound for Kingston, Jamaica. And
Bermuda, Bahama, ooh, I wanna take you, Jamaica, to the Florida Keys, or whatever. Anyways.
But unlike the Star Tiger, the weather for this flight was actually considered quite good, and the captain was reporting excellent visibility, and the aircraft was climbing normally, and like all the radio communication and everything was routine, and there was no reports of any sort of mechanical problems. There was no distress calls, no indication that anything unusual was happening. And then Goldie, all of a sudden, everything stopped again. Everything stopped. Another disappearance. And again, like extensive searches followed, but there was no confirmed wreckage found. When investigators were reviewing the evidence, again, like no definitive cause. So they couldn't really identify and determine what happened here. And now, because these two disappearances occurred only like a year apart and involved the same aircraft and the same airline, this really, really helped with like the theories of Bermuda Triangle. Like it naturally started to become part of this growing legend.
Because this was only literally like 1 year later. Like that one disappeared in 1948. This one's in 1949.
Yeah, almost nearly a year apart. So this is January 30th. This is January 17th. So those are our two other like mysterious airline disappearances. So let's move back to the ocean. So in February of 1963, there was a tanker called the Marine Sulphur Queen, which departed Texas carrying a cargo of molten sulfur. Now, the ship was particularly interesting from an engineering perspective, again, because originally this ship was designed to be an oil tanker. Later, it was converted into this vessel capable of transporting molten sulfur, which is a very, very different type of cargo requiring these very, very high temperatures to keep the sulfur in liquid form. And whenever engineers significantly modify any sort of existing structure, there's one question that naturally arises, which is like, how does that modification actually affect the structural integrity of the original design?
That's what you did. That's what like you used to do. And one thing I found really cool is like you told me that like the regulations when it comes to airplanes right now, like, and maybe you can expand on this, but the regulations with airplanes are so strict that even if you want to like literally change the paint, right? So you want to, let's say, repaint the airplane, you have to go through the entire process and do all these like sciencey physics, aerospace engineering calculations to see how is like, just repainting a plane, for example, will like, how is that going to affect or impact the plane itself, right?
Absolutely. So like in aviation, like you generally just can't do any sort of mods anytime you want. Any sort of like change to the aircraft's design, structure, engines, or any sort of systems must be thoroughly analyzed and tested and approved by regulatory bodies before it can legally fly. And like when you think of paint, you might think of, that's like not a big deal. That's not really a structural change, but you have to do fire testing. You have to see how flammable the paint is. So like everything is very, very highly regulated and has these very, very strict safety standards. And yeah, like if you change anything really, you have to go through that whole approval process again. And like, in the US, you have the Federal Aviation Administration, which is the regulatory body there. In Canada, we had Transport Canada, but the Transport Canada airplane regulations are very, very similar to the FAA one. So it was essentially based off of that. So yeah, like absolutely. I don't know too much about naval regulation. Maybe it's changed since 1963, but like again, a lot of these strict standards could have come about because of some of these accidents as well. And every sort of accident, especially when it comes to aviation, only makes your next flight that much safer because we learned something from it and we make sure we don't do that same mistake again. Okay, so going back to this ship, shortly after it left the port from Texas, there was 39 people on board. So very shortly after, this ship just like vanished. And unlike some of our earlier cases, investigators did recover a very, very small amount of debris. So in most of our cases, we didn't find any sort of debris, but here we found like a little bit. However, there was no definitive wreck that was located, and investigators were still unable to determine the exact cause of what caused that vessel to sink. Again, like several engineering concerns had been raised before this ship went on its final voyage, including some of those like structural strength and cargo handling concerns. And, no one listened to those guys. And it's possible that some of those concerns is related to its disappearance. But because we never really found it, there still isn't enough evidence to reach a definitive conclusion.
Rose, maybe we should do like a fundraising or a crowdsourcing, and then you can like go to the Bermuda Triangle and like do a live stream from the Bermuda Triangle and like report on all this stuff there. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Oh right? My God, that's so funny. I'll do like a voyage like through to try to find some of these wreckages. That's so funny. Okay, so we're going to talk about our final case file before we move on to our suspects, guys. And our final case is a little bit different because unlike the other ones, we actually almost know exactly where this happened. So this happened in December of 1967 in a cabin cruiser. So it's like a small, like luxury like boat. So this boat was named Witchcraft, which is very interesting. There's some interesting names here. Like we have Witchcraft, we have Cyclops. But yeah, so this cabin cruiser was named Witchcraft, and it left Miami, excuse me, with 2 men on board. And they were only about like 1 mile offshore. And their plan was to like admire these Christmas lights along the Miami coastline. It's the holiday season. It's almost Christmas time. They're like, yeah, like let's go just like look at the Christmas lights. And at one point, the captain of this ship radioed the Coast Guard to report that their vessel had actually struck something, and they requested assistance. So he didn't describe it as an emergency. He just simply requested like a tow. So he was like, hey, like we hit something. Can you please come tow us? And the Coast Guard did respond immediately. But then when the Coast Guard reached the reported location, approximately like 19 minutes later, so it wasn't even like that long. So they called, they asked for a tow. 19 minutes later, the Coast Guard is there. The boat was gone. It disappeared. There were no passengers. There was no floating vessel. There was no wreckage. And, the guys just went missing. And it is one of the strangest disappearances because help arrived so quickly and the location was known. But despite that, the vessel was never recovered. So these are our case files, guys. Next, we're going to move on to our primary suspects. Dun, dun, dun.
Why do I not see aliens on the list?
That's for part 2.
Okay, fine.
Okay. That's so funny. Okay, how do I want to? Okay. So we've looked at 6 different disappearances spanning across almost 50 years. We've seen military aircraft, civilian airliners, cargo ships, naval vessels, even like that small little cabin cruiser or pleasure boat there. And some disappeared in good weather and some disappeared in poorer weather. Some of them left some debris. Some of them left nothing at all. And most of them still remain unresolved to this day. And so this is our primary suspect board. And I think there's one suspect which needs to be questioned before any of the other suspects. And it's suspect number 1, which is extreme weather. So I know
I'm going to take a quick break, but I'll be in the background. Guys, the
Okay.
Bermuda Triangle is not taking me, but I'm going to be in the background. I'll be in the live stream chat.
Okay. So like I know extreme weather probably sounds like the least exciting explanation of like, what could be causing some of these. Because like when people think of the Bermuda Triangle, they do tend to imagine like something very mysterious, like some hidden force that exists in this particular area of the Atlantic. Like is there a portal? Is there aliens? But because of that, like something like a hurricane or a storm almost seems like entirely too ordinary to explain a mystery that's captured people's imaginations for decades at a time. But nature, honestly, guys, does not have to be supernatural to be incredibly scary or dangerous. Like, even just thinking about our tornado live stream a few episodes ago, like, weather can be very, very scary sometimes. And it could even be among some of the most destructive forces on Earth. And it's completely natural. So, like, think of earthquakes, think of tsunamis, think of volcanic eruptions, lightning, avalanches, haboobs. Laura, if you're here, you're our resident haboob girl, but none of those require any sort of mysterious element to become deadly. The atmosphere and the oceans are intrinsically incredibly energetic systems. And when the right conditions come together, they can become surprisingly violent. And so I'm going to quickly go to this diagram of the West Atlantic. So when we spoke about the Bermuda Triangle, like it sits in a region of the Atlantic Ocean that is influenced by several major weather systems. So to the south, you have like these warm tropical waters that are stretching through the Caribbean. And then to the north, you have these cooler air masses that are moving down from North America. And then, flowing through the middle of these is the Gulf Stream. So we'll talk about the Gulf Stream in a little bit because that's actually another one of our suspects. But this combination of warm water, a lot of moisture, and this unstable air, and like these very, very strong winds makes this one of the most meteorologically active parts of the Atlantic Ocean. And so if you ever wondered why like hurricanes are so often associated with like Florida, the Bahamas, Bermuda, the Caribbean, this is exactly why. It's because of these conditions, and warm ocean water is the fuel that powers these tropical storms. And the ocean itself absorbs enormous amounts of energy from the sun all throughout the summer. And when the surface of the water reaches temperatures of about 80 degrees Fahrenheit or about 25-ish degrees Celsius, it contains enough thermal energy to begin supporting some of these tropical cyclone developments. And when that warm water evaporates, it rises into the atmosphere. And as it rises, it cools down and then condenses back into these tiny water droplets. And that, forms clouds. And when water vapor condenses into liquid water, it releases something called latent heat. And that latent heat is released into the surrounding air and it warms it. And because we know that warm air is less dense than cold air, it continues to rise, drawing in even more warm, moist air from the ocean below. And especially if all of the atmospheric conditions are favorable, that continuous system can organize itself into a tropical storm or even into a hurricane. And hurricanes are absolutely capable of producing the conditions that would be extraordinarily dangerous for any sort of ship or any sort of aircraft if it were to move, through that. So, this is our hurricane diagram. And so major hurricanes can produce sustained winds of like well over 250 miles per hour. Kilometers per hour. And there are gusts that could be even stronger than that. And those winds generate enormous waves and make controlling like either ships or aircraft extremely difficult. And then on top of that, you also have like rainfall. You have rainfall. Some hurricanes can produce hundreds of millimeters of rain in a single day. And a lot of that heavy precipitation dramatically reduces things like visibility. And for aircraft, it increases the risk of severe turbulence and like water ingestion into the engines. And then you also have things like lightning in a hurricane, and rapidly changing pressures and like, this violent turbulence and, all of these terrible, terrible conditions, which, are very dangerous and very extreme. But honestly, like one of the greatest dangers isn't any sort of single feature associated with a hurricane. It's like all of these hazards that often occur at the same time. So, like today, when you're flying in a modern airliner, all pilots typically try to avoid like really bad weather conditions like this. And modern aircraft have things like weather radar, and pilots that are facing real time weather conditions have satellite data and guidance from air traffic control that could help them navigate and go around some of these bad weather systems. And sometimes entire routes can be adjusted like hundreds of kilometers to avoid dangerous weather patterns and weather systems. But many of the disappearances that we discussed occurred decades before any sort of that kind of technology existed. And, there was no weather satellite, there was no Doppler radar. And meteorologists were heavily relying on surface observations and like weather balloons to understand what, weather we were experiencing. And so that means that crews could encounter deteriorating weather with far less warning than what we would expect today. And so that would certainly cause, a lot of potential for bad accidents to happen. Now, hurricanes are only a part of the story because weather over the ocean doesn't have to be hurricane strength to become dangerous. So I want to talk about squalls, microbursts, and waterspouts next. So a squall is scary, and it's essentially like a sudden intense increase in wind speed that's usually associated with like a thunderstorm or rapidly developing weather systems. And unlike a hurricane, which can develop over days at a time, a squall can actually arrive very, very quickly. And so like just imagine, you're sailing in relatively calm water, you're enjoying, the weather, and then all of a sudden the sky starts to darken, and within minutes, the winds are increasing dramatically. And like the rain reduces your visibility to almost zero, and the state of the sea is changing rapidly. And for a small vessel, this can become life-threatening very, very fast and surprisingly quickly. So, squalls are very fast and can kind of come out of nowhere. And then you have another thing called a microburst. So, microbursts are these incredibly powerful downdrafts that descend from thunderstorms and spread outwards when they hit a surface. And so these can produce intense wind shear, meaning that the wind is changing direction and speed very, very rapidly over a short distance. And so for any sort of aircraft, particularly those that are flying at a lower altitude, for instance, during takeoff or landing, microbursts can be extremely dangerous. And today, a lot of airports around the world have these sophisticated wind shear detection systems because we've learned how incredibly hazardous and dangerous microbursts can be. But like, decades ago, pilots didn't even fully understand that these things and these phenomena existed. And so, this microburst could certainly be a cause for a lot of intense, extreme damage to an aircraft that could kind of come out of nowhere. And then you also have water spouts. So this is another fascinating phenomenon, which is essentially a tornado that forms over water. Most water spouts are much weaker than violent tornadoes that you might see in like Oklahoma or Kansas. And like, guys, go back and watch our tornado live stream. I love that we're repeating like topics that we've talked about before. So
yeah, like it adds a lot of context, right? So I mean, now that I know that water tornadoes exist, that makes me think that Sharknado could be a real thing, because like like think about it. What if like there were sharks swimming at like, at the top of the ocean, and then all of a sudden like
they
a
get
water
caught up.
spout forms, and then the sharks get caught up in it. So like Sharknado is scientifically possible if the water spout is big enough.
I feel like I need to redo this diagram with like a little shark like in the middle. Ooh, what a missed opportunity. I'm sorry, guys.
No, you know what? That's okay, because Shark Week is next week. So you and everyone's talking about it in the chat. So
Oh, no
you
way.
might have an opportunity to do like a quick live stream next week
On
for
shark?
Week. Yeah, you can talk about the science behind Sharknado.
Oh my God. Oh, that's so funny. But yeah, so like essentially, guys, microbursts are like they are weaker than some of the other land tornadoes that we talked about, but they can still certainly produce these strong winds and like heavy spray and dangerous waves and definitely a lot of turbulence. And they do occur around the waters near Florida and the Bahamas, so they can certainly be part of our suspect board. So going back to our primary suspects, extreme weather is a strong candidate. So we will categorize extreme weather as a strong candidate. So the next one is rogue waves. Goldie, have you heard of rogue waves before?
No, I've heard of tidal waves, but I haven't heard of rogue waves.
Okay, so rogue waves,
they're the bad guys. So the tidal waves fight the rogue waves, right? Is that what it is? Like, are we talking about like it's like Game of Thrones, but like Game of Waves now or something?
That's so funny. So okay, let's go back and think of our case files. So when we think about weather, that is certainly capable of causing serious maritime and aviation accidents, but it doesn't answer all of our questions. So let's go back to the USS Cyclops, which was the big ship that we were talking about. So if that ship really did encounter severe seas, what would that actually look like? And like, are we talking about large waves? Are we talking about something even more dangerous that sailors occasionally encounter? And so this is where rogue waves come into play. And so I want to actually talk about a specific incident. So this is the Doppler platform. And so let's paint a picture. It's New Year's Day in 1995. There's an offshore oil platform in the North Sea called the Doppler platform. And it actually recorded a wave of approximately 25.6 meters high, which comes out to 84 feet. And to put that into perspective, like that's massive. Like this building is like a 3 to 4 story building, and like this wave is, almost twice as high. And so there was this wave that was recorded on this oil platform using these high laser wave sensors. And like this is roughly the size of like an 8-story building, Goldie. So it's absolutely massive. And it became one of the first
Yeah, I was literally looking that up right now. I was like, how many stories is 84 feet? And you literally told me. So it's like an 8-story building.
Yeah. So it's an 8-story building. And so this actually became the first widely accepted scientific confirmation that rogue waves are real and it's like an actual thing. And it's one of the leading explanations around why some of these things could be happening within the Bermuda Triangle. And so when we talk about like how this actually forms, so the way this works is that like the ocean is made up of these thousands of waves that are traveling all in different directions. And like these are all generated by different storms and different wind systems. And one of the leading explanations around how rogue waves form is through something called constructive interference. And so most of the times these waves that are traveling through the ocean simply pass like through one another and they kind of like cancel each other out. But sometimes several wave crests line up at exactly the right place and at the right time. And instead of canceling each other out, like some of these waves are doing, these waves align and they combine to produce one exceptionally large wave before quickly disappearing again. So it's not necessarily like associated with a storm or like a hurricane. It just kind of can come out of nowhere because it's associated with these different waves kind of going in different directions. And so going back to our ship disappearances, could we think a rogue wave could be a primary suspect and sink a ship? I think absolutely.
Yeah, but the rogue wave couldn't sink the plane. Rogue waves don't sink planes.
That is true, but we're not necessarily finding one suspect. There could be a case that there could be several different suspects.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That are causing, some of these accidents to happen. Even today, Goldie, like many modern ships have been damaged by rogue waves, and like engineers now are accounting for rogue waves when they design some of these offshore platforms, like that oil platform, and like any sort of large vessel, because we do know that like it actually is a thing, and it's certainly possible that one of these rogue waves could have contributed to the loss of USS Cyclops, for example. And it could also explain the disappearance of the Witchcraft, which is the much smaller boat. But as you mentioned, it doesn't necessarily explain the disappearance of the airplanes. So, when it comes to our verdict, I would classify rogue wave as a contributing factor. So it could certainly contribute to some of these disappearances and mysteries around the Bermuda Triangle. So we have extreme weather, we have rogue waves. Next up, we have the Gulf Stream. So the Gulf Stream is very interesting. And, there's still one thing that bothers me, because a lot of these cases that we talked about, a very commonly reoccurring theme was that no wreckage was found. Like, let's say, for example, a ship sinks or like an airplane crashes in the ocean. Why do so many of these cases seem to leave behind so little evidence? And this is where the Gulf Stream could actually play a part in this. So this is a rough map of the Gulf Stream. And guys,
and that's kind of like an underwater current or something, right?
So I'll explain. Okay. But look, I have it starting at the Gulf of America. So I,
Oh, you updated the map.
I updated my map. So the Gulf Stream begins at the Gulf of America, and it flows through the Florida Straits, and then it travels north along the east coast of North America before eventually crossing the Atlantic and then like going towards Europe. And so the Gulf Stream is transporting an enormous amount of water, far, far more than like all of the world's rivers combined. And in some areas, the current can actually reach speeds of around 4 to 6 miles per hour, which might not seem like a particularly fast, current. But like imagine just dropping a floating object into that current over the course of a single day, it could be carried well over like 100 kilometers from where you originally dropped it. So let's say you had an aircraft that crashed into the ocean or a ship that began breaking apart. Any sort of floating debris would not simply stay in one place waiting for you as an investigator to find it. It would immediately begin drifting. And, the longer it took for some of these search crews to actually arrive at these scenes, the farther that debris would be scattered. And so, one of the reasons the ocean search and rescue is so incredibly difficult in general, like not even for this like the Bermuda Triangle, is because of like these ocean currents like that. Because essentially, like, investigators aren't searching for a stationary target. They're searching for objects that may have already traveled like dozens or even hundreds of miles across from the original accident or the scene of the crime.
Yeah, I'm not a miles person. I'm Canadian. So sorry to all the Americans there. You know what? I will go with Gulf of America, but when it comes to the measurement system, I'm a kilometer person. Miles means nothing to me. Like how many, like why is it like 12 inches? 12 inches makes like a yard or a foot, and then like I don't know,
12 inches makes a foot. I don't think it makes a yard.
Yeah, 3.3
I think
feet
something
make like
random
a yard or something. And then the football field is like I don't know how many yards. I don't know, man. Kilometers makes more sense. Like go with like the 10 unit system. So there you go. I'm just saying that.
I think like Americans like to do measurements in hard mode, and like kudos to you guys for doing it.
Oh my gosh. You know what? That's the perfect way of saying it. Americans do measurements not in hard mode. They do it in like expert mode. Right?
Expert mode. Yeah, that's the way to go about it. But yeah, so the Gulf Stream definitely like complicates everything when it comes to an investigation, just because like everything's moving. But not everything floats though. So not everything would be caught in the stream and like transport hundreds of like miles or kilometers. Heavy aircraft engines, for example, like some of those very, very heavy things sink almost immediately. And like large sections of ships eventually also sink. And once those objects reach the seafloor, recovering them becomes an entirely different challenge. And like in this part of the Atlantic, that's also no small feat, and it's no easy task because the ocean floor beneath parts of the Bermuda Triangle and in this area of the ocean like drops very, very, very deep into like these deep ocean basins. And like in some of these areas, it can be like close to 16,000 feet or like Goldie, 5,000 meters approximately for you, like very, very deep locations. And at those depths, you have immense pressure, like sunlight never reaches those areas, and like locating a wreck can be extraordinarily difficult, even with modern technology today. So, like, imagine trying to locate a ship or an aircraft that disappeared decades earlier with far less precision and information about its last known position. Like, it could be absolutely impossible. So, when it comes to thinking about whether the Gulf Stream caused ships to disappear, the answer is no. Like the Gulf Stream itself does not cause ships and aircraft to disappear. But what it does do is make the aftermath of a particular accident much more difficult to reconstruct and investigate because it quickly carries away the floating evidence while, deeper portions of the ocean, some of those heavier debris fields could be like thousands of meters or feet below the surface of the ocean. So going back to our suspect board, guys, the Gulf Stream is not a cause of the disappearances. However, it is a very strong reason for why many accidents become difficult to investigate and why some of these things were never found. So I am placing the Gulf Stream in the category of strong evidence. Not as a cause for the disappearances, but a reason why many of these remain unsolved. Okay, so next up we have navigation errors. So we're switching a little bit away from the ocean and like back into like the flight deck, because one of the most intriguing pieces of evidence we encountered tonight actually came from Flight 19 when we were discussing, what happened with those airplanes. So as a refresh, this is where an experienced flight instructor suddenly reported that like he wasn't sure where he was. He had lost his sense of coordination, and this raises a fascinating question because like it's very very easy to become lost over an open ocean, and so this is why navigation errors is our next suspect, because
And, sorry, I just want to say, like, this kind of makes sense because, initially people are like, okay, well, you can just follow the direction of the sun, but no, knowing north, south, east, or west, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know where you're going, because if you think you're in the wrong location, like what happened potentially with Flight 19, they thought that they were west of Florida, but they were actually east of Florida, and so they were going east into the Atlantic instead of going west back to shore. So it wasn't an issue of direction; it was just they got lost.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like they're all contributing factors. And like, Goldie, we take navigation like so for granted these days. Like, we all have our smartphones, they all have GPS. Like, we can know exactly where we are within like a few feet at an instant. And like airlines today have GPS, navigations, they have navigation systems, they have weather radar, they have like these air traffic controls, like they have all these different things in modern aircraft that are guiding them and monitoring them throughout their flight. But this wasn't always the case. And if we go back to many of the incidents that we discussed tonight, Flight 19 being one of them, navigation over open ocean was like a very, very difficult task because once you're actually out over the Atlantic, there are no roads, there's no landmarks, there's like nothing but water stretching in every direction. And on a clear day, the horizon looks almost identical no matter which direction you turn. So, like, this means that pilots and sailors had to heavily rely on a combination of different navigation techniques, including magnetic compasses and dead reckoning. And so I'm going to quickly go over both of those.
And I'm just thinking, Rose, before you get to that, like how much today we literally rely on GPS, right? Even when we know where we're going, many of us will still, use the GPS, to help with traffic or whatever. But like when I'm driving, I can't think of like not having my GPS, even if it's just to help me with like the best traffic or, the best routes to avoid traffic or whatever. But just for everyone watching, imagine how much today we rely on like GPS on our phones. And these pilots 60, 70, 80 years ago were literally going over the ocean with no GPS and just like a compass or something.
Yeah, absolutely wild. So yeah, like as you said, a magnetic compass, this points towards magnetic north and provides a reference for direction. And then you have dead reckoning, which is essentially the process of estimating your current position based on where you started and how fast you're traveling and what direction you think you might be heading and how much time has passed. So it's essentially like an educated guesstimation. But the problem when it comes to dead reckoning as a navigational system is that any small error that you have begins to accumulate. And over short distances, like, this might not be a problem, but if your heading is off by just a few degrees or your airspeed isn't quite what you think it is because the winds might be stronger than you expected, your estimated position slowly starts to drift further and further away from your actual position. And like over a few hundred miles, that could become enormous, especially across the open ocean. And remember, like before GPS, you didn't have like a screen telling you that your estimate is wrong. You simply continued navigating based on the information that you believed was correct. And so during Flight 19, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, who was the pilot, reported that he believed that both of his compasses were malfunctioning, and more importantly, that he was no longer certain of his decision. And
So
so
is this human error then, or is this like aliens because his compass wasn't working? So this is like the magnetic field or something.
So no, this is essentially like a form of human error, but
but it's not his fault that the compass wasn't working.
so it was a combination of like the magnetic compass malfunctioning and he himself being spatially disoriented.
Okay,
So
I see.
once a pilot like just sorry to clarify, whether the compasses were actually faulty, we don't know. This is just what he thought. So the compasses could have been faulty, or maybe he had just simply become disoriented. That's still a matter of debate. So maybe the compasses were working, but if he thought he was in the wrong direction going one way, but the compass is actually saying like, no, like this is, this is true north. But in his head, if he thinks he's going in the wrong direction, he's going to assume that the compass is not working. But we don't actually have any evidence to say what actually happened. But once a pilot misidentifies their location, every navigation decision that comes after this makes the situation significantly worse. So, like if you think you're west of Florida, but you're actually east of Florida, you may turn exactly in the wrong direction. And because you're over open water, there's no visual cue to tell you you've made that mistake. And essentially, this is when you get spatially disoriented. And it's something that like a lot of pilots are trained excessively to recognize and to avoid. So, this could certainly be one of the leading causes for what happened with, the tragic case of Flight 19. It certainly doesn't explain every single disappearance in the Bermuda Triangle, but it does provide a very plausible explanation for at least some of these aviation incidents, particularly Flight 19. So, going back to our suspects, navigation errors are a well understood and well documented cause of accidents throughout aviation and maritime history. Because like over this open water, it's very easy for small mistakes to quickly become big mistakes, especially before the era of satellite navigation. And so for this reason, I would place navigation errors under strong evidence. So there's strong evidence that navigation errors could be one of the primary suspects. This takes us to what you mentioned, Goldie, which is magnetic anomalies. So this is suspect number 5. And like one of the most common theories that is almost synonymous with Bermuda Triangle is that like compasses go crazy, and like you've probably heard claims throughout the years that navigation instruments suddenly stop working and that compasses are spinning uncontrollably, or that the Bermuda Triangle has some sort of like unique magnetic field that's capable of confusing pilots and sailors. So I want to do a quick review of how a compass works. And again, guys, we spoke about this briefly at during our magnetism live stream a few weeks ago. But a compass is simply like a small magnet that's free to rotate. And like any magnet, it's aligning itself with Earth's magnetic field, pointing towards magnetic north and not true north. So the magnetic north and the geographical North Pole are two different locations that are separated, by a significant amount. And this is because Earth's magnetic field is not perfectly aligned with its axis of rotation. And the angle between true north and magnetic north changes depending on where you are in the world. And so this is called magnetic declination. So this is the difference between true north and magnetic north. And so if you're using a compass correctly, this isn't a problem because navigation charts typically account for magnetic declination, and pilots and mariners are trained to apply those corrections when necessary when they're using these charts and navigation systems. So the fact that a compass doesn't point exactly to true north is not something that's unusual, because that's just simply how Earth's magnetic field works everywhere on the planet. Now, one reason why this magnetic anomalies theory became so popular for the Bermuda Triangle is because of something called an agonic line. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Okay, so we spoke about how true north and magnetic north are different. Well, in most places on Earth, your compass points a little bit to one side of true north because it's following Earth's magnetic field. But along the agonic line, those two directions happen to line up almost perfectly. So this is the agonic line here, which is the white line over here that you can see across the center of the screen. So along the agonic line, true north and Earth's magnetic field happen to line up. So in other words, your compass points almost exactly to true north without needing any correction. And so historically, that agonic line passed near parts of the Bermuda Triangle. So you can see over here, this is the region of the Bermuda Triangle. And so the agonic line is passing through this area. And so, some people saw that and thought that, like, maybe something strange is happening here. But it's actually the opposite, because an agonic line isn't a magnetic anomaly at all. It's simply one of the few places on Earth where a compass behaves exactly the way you would expect, because Earth's magnetic field isn't fixed. And we talked about this before. There's, molten iron moving around deep inside the Earth's core, and it's constantly changing the magnetic field. So that also means the magnetic north pole slowly also drifts over time. And so when this happens, this agonic line, so this white line, is also moving as well. And so the reason why we've seen reports of compasses behaving strangely is because, like, a compass can absolutely give incorrect readings, and any sort of electrical equipment could throw it off. You have a nearby electrical equipment, any sort of magnetic rocks, maybe your instrument is damaged, or like any sort of poor calibration can cause a compass to malfunction. But those things could happen anywhere in the world. And scientists have never actually found true evidence that, it's happening more often in the Bermuda Triangle compared to anywhere else. And there's also certainly no evidence that the Bermuda Triangle has a unique magnetic field that's causing some of these compasses to fail. So there's actually not much evidence that the Bermuda Triangle itself is causing any sort of, magnetic anomaly per se. And so, we certainly know that Earth's magnetic field is real, but, we know magnetic declination is real. We know that compass errors are real, but the idea that the Bermuda Triangle has a unique magnetic anomaly that's capable of widespread navigation failures simply is not supported by enough scientific evidence, particularly even when we were looking at the navigation map, the live navigation map, and we were looking at all those ships that were crossing and within that area. We're not hearing about reports of anything going awry. And so for this reason, I would place magnetic anomalies in the category of weak evidence. So not a very good suspect for us, Goldie.
But doesn't the compass rely on the magnet?
Doesn't the compass rely on the magnet? Yeah, it does. But
So if let's say the compass was malfunctioning, couldn't that be a magnetic anomaly?
so this is where the agonic line comes in. Okay, so let me go back to okay. So so the compass always aligns itself with Earth's magnetic field, which is not the geographic North Pole. And in most places on Earth, the magnetic north and the true north are slightly in different directions. And so that's called magnetic declination. But the agonic line, that difference is zero. So there's no magnetic declination here. So, in other words, the compass is still pointing to magnetic north, but at that location, the magnetic north and the true north are happening to line up. So, if
Okay.
you're standing on the agonic line, you don't need to apply a declination correction. Your compass is already pointing in almost exactly the right spot. So, if you're on the agonic line, which passes through this area of the Bermuda Triangle, but let's say, for instance, you're still applying that correction for magnetic declination, your compass is going to be pointing in the wrong direction.
Oh, I see. Okay, so if you don't know that you're standing on the agonic line, where magnetic north and like the North Pole where Santa Claus lives is one and the same, right? If you don't know that, then even though you're facing the north that you're supposed to be, you're going to correct it because of where you think you are, and then that means you are making the wrong determination of the direction.
There you go.
Okay, I see.
There you go.
So
Okay.
basically what you're saying is it's aliens.
Basically it's aliens. Alien Revolution Live. Okay. So, next up, let's go back to our suspect board. So again, guys, magnetic anomaly, I'm placing as weak evidence. Not a very good suspect. Next up, this is actually very interesting. So this is methane gas, and it's actually something that comes up quite frequently when people talk about the Bermuda Triangle and like the cause of disappearances. And it's definitely a very unusual explanation. Have you heard of this one, Goldie?
Methane gas?
Like as a cause of like why?
Isn't methane gas like the stinky gas?
Yeah.
So are you saying that like farts? Like, I don't understand. Oh my gosh, I've talked so much that I'm losing my voice. So are you basically saying that one potential cause of disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle could be
Silent but deadly.
farts, the silent but deadlies? The goose?
That's so funny.
Only those.
It's definitely made of the same elements,
Oh
molecules.
yeah, it does. Methane gas.
Um,
Silent but deadlies.
but there's not this massive giant sea creature at the bottom of the ocean that's like tooting and causing these things to happen. Or maybe there could be. I don't know.
I mean, that could be. Maybe that's where the legend of Cthulhu comes from, right? It could be like a giant sea, or like when they say release the Kraken, it's like a giant ocean fart or something.
Oh my god, giant ocean fart. Yes. But okay, so where this actually comes from is the theory behind methane gas being a culprit or a suspect is because there are these giant pockets of methane gas that are actually trapped beneath the ocean floor. And the idea here is that under the right conditions, that gas could actually suddenly be released into the water.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the earth farts.
Oh my goodness.
So you're well, but that's what you're saying, right? Like you're basically just telling us that
listen,
the earth farts.
I'm sure farts, like human farts, consist of like other things that also like make it, smell bad, for instance.
But you're saying that the Earth randomly just releases gas into the air.
Oh my god. Okay, I have to explain this to you. Okay, hold on. I have another diagram for this, so let's go.
This makes it worse, not better.
Okay, this does make it worse. I wasn't thinking about farts when I was putting together. Oh my god. You're so funny. But okay, so it's not actually the you know, the earth farting. But so in some parts of the ocean water, this methane becomes trapped inside these ice-like crystals called methane hydrates. And these form under very specific conditions. So methane hydrates form typically when water is cold, when the pressure is very high, and when there is plenty of methane being produced by decaying organic material beneath the seabed. So it's this organic material that's been, decaying for like millennia, from like, dinosaurs and like ancient prehistoric animals and things like that that are under the seabed. So you have this decaying organic material, and you can think of the methane hydrates kind of being like these frozen cages of water, frozen cages of water molecules that like trap methane gas inside. And as long as the temperature is low and the pressure is high, those hydrates remain stable. But if if the conditions change for any sort of reason, so for example, like the sediment around like the ocean bed becomes disturbed or is even warmed up by temperatures, these hydrates can start to break apart and it releases the fart or the methane gas.
Oh no.
And so now that we know, like, how this methane gas could be released, how it relates to the Bermuda Triangle is that some researchers have proposed that if a very large amount of methane was to be released very quickly, it could create like a huge column of bubbles that you see here, that like rises through the water. And if a ship is floating above that, the water would not be able to support the weight of the boat
because of the air underneath it and the density, right?
Exactly.
So because bubbles are full of air and the bubbles rise. So if you're caught in that, right, because of the whole buoyancy thing.
Exactly, yeah.
So basically if you're caught in an earth fart, you sink because okay, good to know.
Yeah, so
new fear unlocked. New fear unlocked. The earth farting is also deadly. So now, guys, there's literally a new meaning to the term silent but deadly. Silent but deadly. There you go.
That's so funny. But yeah, that's basically what this theory is suggesting. So exactly, Goldie, you nailed it. So the water could suddenly release a large volume of gas bubbles that would cause the water in that specific area to become less dense. Less dense water provides less buoyancy. So the idea here is that if you're a ship passing directly through one of these giant methane plumes, you could lose the buoyancy that you need to stay afloat, and then that would, cause you to sink. And it happens much more rapidly than you would expect. But one thing I want to mention is that, like, scientifically, this is a reasonable concept.
But the probability is probably low.
So the probability is low. And like from a physics standpoint, the mechanism itself is real. Like you can test this in a laboratory and like you would see that like this is something that could actually happen. But despite years of research, scientists have actually found very little evidence that the Bermuda Triangle contains the kind of massive sudden methane release needed to sink any sort of large ship. So there's no actual evidence that's ever been found against this theory. There are large methane hydrate deposits in various parts of the ocean, including the Atlantic, all over the world, but there isn't sort of any good evidence that suggests they're being released frequently or violently enough to explain the disappearance, and like any of the disappearances that we discussed tonight. So even though like the underlying geology around this is real and like the physics of buoyancy is real, like taking that leap from science to like explaining that to like why the Bermuda Triangle, is happening isn't supported by enough good evidence. So I would not place methane gas very high on our list of suspects. So if I was you, Goldie, I wouldn't be too worried about, these giant earth farts.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like the like, is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? The probability is very low, right? Like you have to be in the right place at the right time, and the ocean is huge, right? So basically what you're saying is that the only, yeah, like I agree with Seeker of the Way, right? That pretty much only leaves like aliens.
Yeah. It could just be aliens, What was that sea creature that you mentioned?
The Kraken. Oh, Cthulhu. No, Cthulhu was written by oh my gosh, Lovecraft.
Oh,
Lovecraft.
okay.
And Cthulhu was like this, like, I don't think he's actually from the ocean, but some of the horror stories depict him depict the Cthulhu was like coming out of the ocean. But there's also the Kraken is the ancient Greek.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the Kraken is the ancient Greek one. But
I love
yeah,
that.
H.P. Lovecraft wrote about Cthulhu. And
Okay.
Call of Cthulhu, which is like, an amazing horror story.
Okay, I love it. Also, shout out to Seeker. They actually wrote and they like produced, I guess, or wrote a really fun gamma ray theme song. That I need to figure out like how to introduce that.
Why don't you just play it right now?
Should I just play it right now? Okay,
Just
hold on. I need to
play it right now.
Just like randomly in the middle of the stream.
Yeah, with like your airplane or whatever.
With my airplane. Okay, it's a couple minutes long. Hold on, let me pull it up. So
Go Gamma Rangers. Go Gamma Rangers.
Okay, so it also has lyrics, but let me see what would be the best way to share.
Is it like a YouTube video or something? Like, is it
not a YouTube video? No. So they made it in something called Suno. And Seeker, like, please correct me if I'm saying any of this wrong. But sorry, my browser actually lost connection to audio, of course, right when I want to share something. So let me reconnect it here. Share screen.
Yeah, guys, you know what? For everyone on the optional class field trip, I was not expecting to learn about earth farts tonight, but there you go. We learned something new.
Okay. So.
Ooh, I'm excited. All right, I guess you should share your screen and we can get into it.
Yes. Okay, so this is by Wayseeker 69. And so they have the lyrics on screen. Hopefully it's big enough. Hold on.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
I know. Yeah, it's a huge shout out to Seeker. Okay, I'm just going to play it. And then we're just
Seeker is a he. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Seeker. Oh my gosh, guys, everyone, please put an S in the chat for Seeker.
Yeah, and then he also, so we had a little discussion, and I also told him that like I'm into rock and like metal, and I'm a bit of a metalhead. So he made it like metal themed. So yeah.
That's
Okay.
so cool.
So it's about 3 minutes long. So let's check it out.
I love it. Let's do this.
If you love to be curious, if you want fun to explore, if you want playful serious, then stay for the anti-war. You are loving the learning, exciting, beautiful graphic show, scientific questions burning. Together we can choose to grow. She is the gamma ray report. She is Rose the brilliant. This is the gamma ray report. We are the Gamma Rangers. Go, go, Gamma Rangers. For the science, for the science. Let's science, let's fly. On the Q400 into the unknown, the fiction series. Science needs a soul. She is the Gamma Ray report. She is Rose the brilliant. This is the Gamma Ray report. We are the Gamma Rangers. Go, go, Gamma Rangers. For the science, for the science. Let's science, let's fly on the Q400 into the unknown. Non-fiction side, science seeks our soul.
I don't have anything science-y. I just have a ruler. I have a ruler. This is my science prop.
She is the Gamma Ray report. She is Rose the brilliant. This is the Gamma Ray report. We are the Gamma Rangers. Go, go, Gamma Rangers. For the science, for the science. Go, go, Gamma Rangers. Go science, go science, go. Go, go, Gamma Rangers. Go science, go science, go. Gamma Rangers, let go. The Gamma Ray report is starting soon. Get hype for science, y'all.
Yeah, hype for science, y'all.
That was
How good was that?
so cool. Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Right?
I can't believe this. Like, you already have like a personal dedicated theme song.
I know. Yeah. Thank you
Super.
so much, Seeker. Guys, I will credit this song in my video description later. And yeah,
I mean,
go
this
check out
could,
Seeker's
this could
stuff.
kind of be like your ending, right? Like when you end your live streams moving forward, like, you know, you could replace the music that you have with like this one maybe, because that was amazing. I can't believe like you have a dedicated personal theme song before me. Wow. Guys, this is what I mean. She's literally the smart one. She's had a YouTube channel for like what, a month, and she already has like a personal theme song for the Gamma Rangers, right? Meanwhile, I'm just dancing with like my ruler because that's like the only sciencey prop I have. And guys, this is like my ruler from high school too. So
Oh, no way. I love it.
well, you know, like back in the day, like the metal rulers with like the wooden back, like they were like the thing. So
Yeah.
the thing is like indestructible, right? So, oh, it's a great poll time song. True.
Yeah. I like this one by Quill. We are the Gamma Ray groupies.
Oh, yeah, we are.
But yeah, Seeker, thank you so much for putting that together. I absolutely love it. It's so fun. And yeah, so guys, Gamma Rangers. So when you become a channel member, you become part of the Gamma Rangers. So that's where Gamma Rangers is coming from.
I'm a Gamma Ranger, by the way. Like, I'm Goldar. So on the Gamma Rangers, I'm Goldar. Guys, so fun story. When I was like a kid, in elementary school, and Power Rangers was like the whole thing, all the rage. People. Oh yeah, you got your protractor. Your protractor is more legitimate than ruler, right? So
Yeah,
like
you
I'm
get
literally
to do angles.
I'm opening up like my little desk here to see like what sciencey thing do I have, and I literally I have like my ruler. I have like a letter opener, and then I have like I don't know like my de-stapler thing, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, so I was like, all right, this is all I have for like science and stuff. Oops. All right, but oh my gosh, that is so amazing! I love that. I'm so happy for you, Seeker. Thank you so much for doing that. Like that was super super awesome. I love that you have a theme song.
Yeah. Look, I'm sure someone will make you one soon.
No, that's okay. I don't need one. I you know what? I already have my song that I've had for like forever. The do 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 do.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, it's pretty much iconic at this point. So I'm really happy with that. But I love that you have the Gamma Rangers song. Seeker, that's amazing. Super cool. Thank you. Wow.
Super cool. Okay, so let's go back to our suspect board. We only have a couple left before we get to our verdict. So the next one is actually going to be human error. So far we've investigated storms, rogue waves, ocean currents like the Gulf Stream, navigation errors, magnetism, and even ocean farts. But statistically speaking, none of those is actually the biggest contributor to transportation accidents around the world and what actually happens and what we actually see. And so the title of the cause of the most common transportation accidents comes down to human error. And like one thing I just want to be clear about is that human error does not mean that people were necessarily careless or incompetent, because in fact, like many of the accidents involved highly trained professionals making decisions that seem completely reasonable based on the information that they had at the time. And so the reality here is that humans are actually operating in very complex environments, often under a lot of stress. And with incomplete information and limited time to make those decisions, a lot of accidents can potentially happen. So this is true whether you're flying in an airplane, whether you're captaining a ship, or like even if you're driving a car, Goldie, like there could be a lot of human errors that happen, when you're driving or riding any of these things or flying. And sometimes like a series of small mistakes can contribute into a much larger problem. And this is where I actually want to go over a well-known concept in aviation safety called the Swiss cheese model. And so the idea behind this, are you gonna laugh? You're laughing at my cheese diagram? Rude. Guys, do you think my cheese diagram's funny?
No, we're talking about the Bermuda Triangle. I wasn't expecting Swiss cheese.
But this is actually a very, popular concept in aviation, and like, I'm sure other things as well. But like the idea behind the Swiss cheese model comes from that, like every safety system has weaknesses or holes, just like different concepts within, just like Swiss cheese. Sorry, like you're making me confuse myself. So every safety system.
You know what? I agree with 7 green tea. The diagram looks a little bit cheesy. That's all I'm saying. It
love cheesy. Keep the cheese coming. I love, I'm not lactose intolerant. Lactose intolerance, cheese, methane,
Yeah, well, that's okay. I didn't say it. You said it. You brought up the methane and cheese, but no, but you know what? You're right. This is like a legitimate.
Hey, look, Aggie likes it. Aggie likes it. So there you go. But okay, so when it comes to what this actually means, like the idea, like the reason why it's Swiss cheese is because like Swiss cheese has holes in it, and Normally, like,
That's like saying water is wet. Sorry. Swiss cheese has holes in it.
oh my god, you're on a roll.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
But the idea here is that like you have safety systems that all have weaknesses or holes, just like slices of Swiss cheese. Normally, those holes don't line up, but occasionally, several small problems can all happen at the same time. So let's say like the weather is deteriorating, maybe like communication isn't perfect, maybe there's a navigation error that already happened, maybe your equipment isn't working as you expect. Each issue on its own might not be enough to cause an accident, but if they all happen together and all of those holes in the cheeses line up, that can allow an accident to occur. That's essentially the theory behind Swiss cheese. So like each one of these slices of cheese is like an accident, and you can see like, the holes aren't necessarily placed in the same direction, but sometimes those holes, if you have the perfect storm, those holes can line up and that can lead to an accident. Exactly.
Like an unholy alliance.
Exactly. There you go. And so that's how investigators think about many of the transportation accidents that happen today. It's like it's usually not just one single, occurrence that causes a catastrophic failure. It's normally this chain reaction of contributing factors that all lead up to like this accident that could be very catastrophic. So let's go back.
It's almost like kind of like in a way like the butterfly effect, where like and I'm being serious here, but like the butterfly effect, where it's like one tiny thing leads to like another thing and another thing and another thing, and then eventually like a butterfly like fluttering its wings or whatever can lead to some sort of catastrophe. So that's sort of how to look at this, where like because the holes aren't aligned, usually like something negative won't happen, but in like very rare circumstances things will just sort of align in a way where every single like bad thing that can happen to create the conditions for whatever that is to happen.
Yeah.
Rose,
okay. Tonight.
Okay, I didn't bring up that comment.
No, I did. Yeah.
Guys, I'm pretty sure I've been disinvited. Like, I'm not coming back after this.
Hey, like everyone has been saying how like amazing my charts are. I love that you called this one out. Like, I love that you. Listen, my cheese chart is gonna be one for the books. I promise you.
You know what? Just for this, I'm gonna have to buy. Like, I literally have to buy your. I mean, I bought the tornado one, but I have to buy this one just for the giant cheese.
It wasn't a tornado one; it was a zombie one.
Oh, right, it was a zombie one, right? You should make a tornado one, but I'm gonna buy this, and I'm literally gonna frame this, and I'm gonna have this in my background, on Iran Revolution Live and the Goldie Show.
You're so funny! Oh my god.
Cheese diagram there.
That's so funny. But okay, sorry. So going back to the cheese chart. I kind of like the cha-cha sound, like the double alliteration. But okay, so going back to Flight 19 and what happened in that instance. So you had Lieutenant Charles Taylor, who was this experienced pilot. No one has ever disputed that. But during the flight, he became uncertain of his position. He believed he was, somewhere that maybe he wasn't. And then every decision after that would have been based on incorrect information proceeding. And so this doesn't make him a bad pilot. It honestly just makes him human. And this is the same cause for any sort of ships or any other sort of transportation accident that can sometimes happen. when it comes to ships, captains have to make decisions about like weather and routes and fuel and cargo and timing. And sometimes they're operating with incomplete forecasts, or like changing sea conditions, and every decision carries uncertainty, and like sometimes that could cause you to want to shoot a laser through Swiss cheese. But like in all seriousness, like this is essentially just like, I don't know, is anyone in the chat who can like vouch for like the cheese chart? Like I'm not making this up, right? Like people, this is common in aviation. Like I'm sure we have, physicists and pilots and like engineers in the chat. So okay, thank you. I have minor. It is a legit thing. This is a thing. I promise you guys. It is a thing.
The cheese chart.
Yeah, my cheese chart. Yeah.
Listen. You're the science expert here, so I will take your word on this. Yeah. So, did you actually learn about the cheese chart in like aerospace engineering?
We did. We learned it. It's, I'm telling you, it's like an actual, it's essentially how, thank you. Yes. It's, it is a thing. And like the Swiss cheese is the analogy. Like the holes in Swiss cheese don't always line up, but sometimes if you have the perfect storm and you have these different slices of cheese, you can have a hole that goes straight through. And that's when all of the accidents kind of line up and happen. Anyways, that's enough of that. Let's never come back to this again.
No, yeah.
Okay, no, we're done. We're done with the cheese chart.
Wait, so in your investigation, how likely is the cheese chart as a culprit?
So it's actually strong. I'm placing it under strong evidence. So
okay.
Essentially it comes down to human error. So for this reason, human error is actually like a very strong contributor to why some of these incidents happen. This brings us to suspect number 8, which is,
so what you're saying is the cheese chart is our like primary suspect.
Yeah, Swiss cheese, guys. Swiss cheese.
Okay.
Okay, so I actually want to ask one of like a very important question, which is the Bermuda Triangle any more dangerous than any other location on the planet? Because if it is, then, maybe there really is something unusual going on. But if there isn't, then we have to rethink the whole mystery. And we spoke about this before, but the Bermuda Triangle is one of the busiest parts of the Atlantic Ocean. So like you have all of these commercial airplanes that fly through it. You have cruise ships that sail through it, cargo ships that transport goods, and private boats and military ships, and millions of people that are traveling across this area every year. So a simple question here is, if one of the busiest stretches of ocean in the world has millions of people traveling through it, would you occasionally expect an accident? Of course you would. More traffic naturally means there's more opportunities for accidents to happen. This doesn't necessarily mean that the area itself is unusually dangerous. And so now you have, researchers and US Coast Guards and insurance companies that you mentioned earlier, Goldie. All of these different groups have looked into this question over the years. And overall, the evidence suggests that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't actually have an unusually high number of accidents compared to other heavily traveled parts of the ocean. And so a big reason then as to why it's associated with having such a mysterious reputation comes down to something we call confirmation bias, which is something that we all do. And so confirmation bias is essentially our brain's tendency to notice information that supports what we already believe and ignores information that it doesn't. So for example, like, let me just say, imagine someone tells you that like red cars are involved in more accidents than any other car. Suddenly, every time you see a red car that's been in a crash, you might notice that car more than any other car, and you'll see like, oh, like there's another red car. But your brain doesn't pay attention to like the thousands of other cars that are red that are driving safely. And the Bermuda Triangle works in the very same way. So when a ship or an airplane disappears there, it becomes a headline. And, we had books written about it. We had those like articles, we had like these stories. So we had all of these things that happened that contributed to having people remember it. But the thousands of ships and airplanes that cross this area every single day with no incident, no one ever talks about them. And so over time, we end up remembering the unusual events and forgetting any of the ordinary ones. And so this can make the Bermuda Triangle seem much more mysterious than the evidence is actually suggesting. Like, the statistics itself doesn't necessarily explain every disappearance, but it does explain why the Bermuda Triangle has become so famous as like a theory and a concept as a whole. So because of that, statistical illusion / confirmation bias is in the category of strong evidence.
That makes, that makes a lot of sense, because you're right. There's a lot of traffic in the area. And of course, so like compared to a part of the ocean where there's very little traffic, the number of accidents or disappearances or whatever is going to be much lower in that area, because there's just not that much traffic there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so we come down to our final suspect then, which is unknown factors. So this is where aliens come in. No, I'm joking. But oh my God, that scared me. I was like, what is that? I was like, is something outside?
I loaded it up. This is like scary alien music.
Oh my God, this is actually terrifying. Okay, so we've worked our way through, every major explanation, every major scientific explanation that's been proposed for the Bermuda Triangle. But, we still haven't fully explained every single disappearance. And there are still ships and aircraft that have disappeared over time without a definitive explanation. And there are still wrecks that have never been found. There are still investigations that officially ended, with like being undetermined. But I think like what's important here for us to understand is that like a case being undetermined doesn't mean intrinsically that it's supernatural. All it means is that there simply wasn't enough evidence to confidently determine what happened. And so many of the cases that we discussed tonight happened like decades before satellites, before GPS, before modern radar and any sort of modern technology. And sometimes investigators didn't know the exact last location or position of a ship or an aircraft. And when you are searching thousands of square miles of like deep ocean, it's entirely possible that like you're going to have these unanswered questions. So uncertainty isn't a weakness, but it's just simply a part of investigating the natural world. But this is where, and like I'm not going to go into these, but this is where theories of like aliens or like Atlantis or portals or like strange supernatural Stargate, sure. Guys, give me your craziest theories in the chat of like what these unknown factors could be. But this is where this comes in. But I'm placing unknown facts in the category of insufficient evidence. So there's insufficient evidence to make an educated determination about unknown factors. So that's where we're going with that. So Okay, so we've looked at all of our evidence, Goldie. We've looked at all of our victims, and we've looked at all of our suspects. So after looking at all of that, we are ready to close our case. And when we started tonight, we asked a simple question, which was, is there really something mysterious about the Bermuda Triangle? And along the way, we looked at, Flight 19. We looked at the USS Cyclops. We looked at, let me pull some of those up. So this was one of the more famous ones. We looked at the Marine Sulfur Queen. We looked at witchcraft. So these are all of our victims. And each of these cases involved real people, real tragedies. And in some cases, there are still questions that remain unanswered to this day. And then we also investigated every major scientific explanation that's been proposed over the years. And some of those explanations turned out to have very strong evidence behind them. And so I'm going to pull up my final diagram of the night, which is the suspects with our labels associated. So strong weather, extreme weather is real. Rogue waves are real. The Gulf Stream is real. Navigation errors happen. Human errors play a role in many transportation accidents. And when you combine those factors with one of the busiest stretches of ocean in the world, it's definitely not surprising that accidents have occurred in this area over the centuries. On the other hand, some of the more famous theories didn't hold up as well. For example, there's no good evidence that the Bermuda Triangle has these unique magnetic properties. And there's very little evidence that, massive methane gases are responsible for some of these disappearances. And while many individual cases remain unsolved, there's no scientific evidence also that invokes things like, supernatural causes as a potential explanation as well. And, I think all of this just makes the topic more interesting as a whole, because the story here isn't necessarily about something magic or something supernatural, but it's essentially how science investigates mysteries. And it always starts with questions. So it gathers evidence, and that's what we did for tonight's investigation. So we gathered our evidence, we tested our ideas, and sometimes after doing all of that work, the answer could still be we don't know for sure. And the Bermuda Triangle reminds us that the ocean is still an incredibly challenging environment. It's very vast, it's very deep. The weather can change rapidly. Navigation over open water can be very difficult. And even with today's modern technology, recovering wreckage from the deep ocean can be an enormous challenge. So while I don't think the evidence that we covered tonight supports the idea that the Bermuda Triangle is some sort of mysterious place where the laws of physics, stop working as we expect, the fact remains that some cases, will be unsolved for, maybe some time, maybe forever, who knows? But what we can say is that based on the evidence that we have today, these are the explanations that fit the best. And it comes down to extreme weather, the Gulf Stream, navigation errors, human error, and statistical illusion. All of those working together, and rogue waves being a contributing factor as well, all of those working together is essentially where I think we could close our case and say these are the primary suspects as it pertains to the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle.
That was, first of all, fantastic analysis, and I really enjoyed going through every single one of those theories and potential suspects, and I learned a lot, so I really appreciate that. And yeah, no, 100%. And I think what really is interesting is the concept of the statistical illusion, because no one was really talking about the Bermuda Triangle before the book came out. And just like that example you gave with the red cars, when that book came out in 1975, all of a sudden the Bermuda Triangle became a thing, and then it was pretty much embedded into Western, pop culture and folklore. So, that's sort of where that comes from, because I can actually think of like quite a number of airplanes and ships that have disappeared in different parts of the world. Um, but like, because it's not part of the Bermuda Triangle, like it's not like a thing. Like, the one example, I had to look this up because I couldn't remember, but like one example I'm thinking of more recently is like Air Asia flight 8501, which was an Airbus that vanished over the Java Sea in December 2014 while flying from Indonesia to Singapore, right? So that's another example of a plane that went missing and no one was able to find any trace of it, right? And then there's also like two other airlines, or planes that happened there. Like, there was one, I can't pronounce this, but Sriwijaya Air Flight 182, which crashed into the sea. Oh, this is the other one. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. It vanished while flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing in 2014.
That was a really popular recent one.
Yeah. So like, these things do happen in different parts of the world, but like you said, I think the statistical illusion one, I think because of the book, right? Everyone's now sort of hyper focused on the Bermuda Triangle.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, that was my analysis on the Bermuda Triangle, and I wanted to do it like a little case file and like pretend to be a detective and like kind of go over that. But yeah, that's what I had for that. Should we go through some of the comments?
Yeah, well, absolutely. You should go to the questions and comments before you end the live stream. There's a lot of people who have questions. So
okay, guys, it's Q&A time. So I will be going through your super chats and answering some questions. Answering some questions. What playlist is this? What is this song called?
I literally just found like a random copyright free song on YouTube that's like scary music, and I added it to your background music while you weren't paying attention. So.
That's so funny. Okay. So first up, we have Atki, who gifted 10 memberships to the Gamma Ray Report. Welcome, new Gamma Rangers. Thank you so much, Atki, for that gift. And guys, so all of you new Gamma Rangers, you can take advantage of your member perks and check out the members only posts that I've made in the YouTube channel to check it out. Thank you so much, Atki, for that. Next up, we have
wait. There's one super chat before that. I think maybe because the comment was posted earlier, you might not have seen it, but it was a super chat from Timothy.
Oh, okay. No, this doesn't show up on my end, but I'm glad you caught it, Goldie. So Timothy says, glad you canceled yesterday in respect of Lindsey Graham. Oh, rest in peace, Amu and Javicha. Yeah, guys. So some of you know I was supposed to have this live stream happen last night. But because we got the news of, the passing of Senator Lindsey, like we weren't in good spirits, and honestly, like it's still, really tough. But I just wanted to leave today. Leave yesterday, just out of respect and postpone the live stream to tonight. So. Thank you all for coming tonight, despite the last minute change. And yeah, he is in our thoughts and prayers. Next up, we have Tony, who says a big magnetic asteroid exploded and split into 3 parts. This is my theory causing the triangle anomaly with the Albert Einstein emoji. That's really interesting. Thank you for that theory, Tony. I don't know if I've heard this one, but that's really interesting. So I'm definitely going to be looking more into that one. But thank you so much for the comment and the super chat. Okay, next up we have Push Up, who says, "Can I guess? When the meteor that took out the dinosaurs hit the flat Earth, it left a hole in the middle that stuff falls into, hence the Bermuda Triangle." Very interesting theories, guys. I can't say I heard this one either, but it's a very interesting theory that Push Up. Let me know where I can read more about this one, because I think it's a pretty interesting one. And thank you for the super chat. Next up, I have William, who says, "Rose, you should know they picked you out. They were stuck with Goldie and couldn't return her. Thought you might like to know. Just saying." I don't know what this is about.
This is about me teasing you, saying that you're adopted.
Oh,
So what they're saying is like they had no choice with me. They're stuck with me, but they specifically chose you because you're the smart one and the better.
William,
Right?
I've never thought about it this way. This is the perfect comeback. So yeah, Goldie, they were stuck with you, but I was chosen. So
Yeah, you are the
there you
chosen
go.
one. You are the chosen one. That is true.
Thank you, William. That's a very funny comment, and I appreciate the super chat. Next up, we have Tony with another theory. So my second theory is that there is an underwater alien base, and the triangle is a force field to throw off navigation who enter the area. Ooh, guys, I wish I was able to find like more evidence of some of these cooler, more interesting theories than just like extreme weather. But like, I was really trying to find fun, interesting things to talk about. And I couldn't. But maybe I'm just not researching in the right places. So Tony, if you have any tips on where I can find more evidence about this underwater alien base, let me know. I'll definitely be sure to cover it in a potential part 2. So thanks for that, Tony. Next up, we have veteran Hoffman with a theory. "My hypothesis is that there is a strong electromagnetic field in the ocean floor caused by natural minerals in the silt, which causes the compass, radio, and instrument problems." That could certainly be a very good explanation as well for why some of these navigational errors could be happening. Again, like there isn't much strong evidence right now that supports a hypothesis like this, but that's certainly not to say that like with more investigation and with more advancement and research into this particular area, potentially maybe we can find some of these minerals that are potentially causing some of these problems. So very interesting theory. I like that you tied in the scientific elements behind it. And yeah, thank you for the comment and the super chat, veteran. Next, we have Hezi Hirschhorn, who says the Persian Triangle is where all the IRGC disappear. Is this where you were talking about how we're gonna make like a Persian Triangle in like the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, we're gonna make the Persian Triangle a thing, and then like that's gonna be like the next big pop culture thing. Like, listen, all you have to do is find like 2 or 3 examples of ships or planes like being lost in like the Strait of Hormuz and then we have like our whole Persian Triangle.
I mean, we have a lot of recent examples of ships being lost there, but like I feel like they all have good reasoning.
Yeah, CENTCOM declassified all the footage. So.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
But thank you, Hezi, for the super chat. That's really funny. Next up, we have Quills, who says, "Masterclass, the Gamma Ray Report, the Bermuda Triangle lecture series with the Ghanaian sisters."
Ghanaian. I think that was a typo. He probably meant the Gamari sisters or something.
Yeah.
We're not from Ghana. Last time I checked. We're not from Guyana. It was probably just like an innocent typo.
I mean, maybe I was. I'm adopted. You know, maybe I was.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, I don't know, but
yeah, we don't know where you're from.
Yeah, I don't know. Bermuda.
There you go. Yeah. Guys, this is why like Rose is like she doesn't want us to know that aliens are responsible for Bermuda, because maybe she's an alien from Bermuda
and protecting the secrets.
She's infiltrating.
That's so funny. Thanks for the funny comment, Close. Next up, we have Minor Dine, who says, "Don't tell the flat earthers about celestial navigation without a trigger warning." This is so funny. You know, Goldie, I actually met a flat earther the other day.
No.
Yeah. And it was like it was the weirdest, strangest experience. And like, you know, like they actually think it's like this giant conspiracy theory. And it just absolutely blows my mind that people seriously consider this to be a thing. But listen,
I'm not a flat earther, but you know, I am a flat mooner, right? Like I'm a...
Oh my God. That's so funny. A flat mooner, eh? Is Pluto flat? Is Pluto flat?
Yeah. Pluto is flat. Pluto is flat. The moon is flat and Pluto is flat. Yes.
Okay, thanks for the comment, Minor. Next up we have Atki, who says they wouldn't be lost if they had an Iranian magi. Yes, that's true. You know, Iranians have
no. So he's referring to the three wise men who, you know, like the North Star, or I don't know which star it was, but you know, the three wise men who were Iranian. Yeah, they were Iranian Zoroastrian priests, and so they followed the star to Bethlehem, where Jesus was born, right? So what he's saying is like, you know, I guess these planes or ships wouldn't have been lost if they had an Iranian Zoroastrian who could guide them.
That is, you know, that's very true. So, you know, you know, too little, too late, guys. Too little, too late. Didn't happen. Okay, next up we have Aki again with a comment. There are reports of it raining fish, spiders, etc. in areas, most likely because of updrafts and water spouts. So Sharknado soon, maybe. That's so funny. Yeah, so this is actually a real phenomenon. So it doesn't happen because like fish are falling from clouds or anything like that. Like they're not, you know, going that high up in the sky. But if there are, as Aggie mentioned, like if there's a really strong water spout, for example, it can lift small fish out of shallow water and like carry them through the air before dropping them somewhere else. So, you know, in theory, if you have a strong enough water spout, maybe Sharknado could be next.
Oh God. You're gonna save that topic for Shark Week though. That's a topic for Shark Week.
Yeah, which you said is next week?
July 26th.
How do you know this?
I looked it up.
People sorry, I thought it was just like a fact that you just like off the top of your head.
People in the chat were speaking about Shark Week, so I looked it up because they were asking like when is Shark Week, so I looked it up. Yeah, you know, it's something called Google. Rose, look it up. Like, how do I know this? I Googled it. That's why.
Rose. Do I use Google to look up Google?
Yeah, go to Google to search for Google, and then yeah, there you go.
Next up, we have Push Up, who says, "Thank you for your patriotism."
So this was in response to your diagram showing the Gulf of America.
Oh yes, yeah, of course, yeah, Gulf of America, guys. We're in it. We're in it. It's a thing. It is a thing. Next up, we have Minor Died, who says Rose should cover GNSS next. Ooh, so this is basically like GPS, Goldie, and like global navigation systems. Is that an interesting topic for you guys? Like, would you guys be interested in that? Let me know in the chat.
Yeah, I want to learn more about Space Force.
Space Force?
Well, don't they use like the global stuff with like satellites and technology? I don't know, but
You know,
like
if I could,
I think that would be very interesting because we all like rely on GPS, right? Like Google or Waze or whatever, right?
yeah.
So
So GPS is one type of global like navigation satellite system, which is what GNSS is. But so like GPS is very commonly used in the United States, but um, different countries use different kinds of GNSS. So like the European Union uses something called Galileo. China uses something different. Russia uses something different. So there are certainly different elements here that we could cover. But yeah, let me know in the comments, guys, if this is interesting. And thank you so much for this suggestion, Minor. I will definitely look into that as a potential candidate for an upcoming live stream. Then you have William that says one of the compasses was a gyroscope or gyroscopic. And I think this might be related to Flight 19 potentially. And like some of the compasses that they have. I actually don't know if one of their compasses was gyroscopic, but like a gyroscopic compass works completely differently from a magnetic compass. So this is a compass that doesn't use magnets at all, and instead it uses these spinning gyroscopes and Earth's rotation to find true north, not magnetic north. So where a normal compass is working because the magnet aligns with Earth's magnetic field, a gyroscope is it contains these high speed spinning gyroscopes. And as Earth rotates, the gyro senses that rotation. And like through this amazing mechanism and like mechanism or electrical system that's inside the gyroscope, it gradually like settles and points towards true north, which is essentially the geographic North Pole. So yeah, I'd be interesting to know if you're talking about Flight 19, if one of those pilots was using a gyroscopic compass. But that would be really interesting.
you know, I would be very much interested to learn about the sort of global navigation system
Yeah.
thing because
Okay.
I just looked this up. Like Rose, can I just share this really quick?
Yeah.
Um, look at this. So I just looked it up. There's like 14,000 over 14,000 like satellites that are like orbiting the Earth. Like so this is what it actually looks like. So like this is wild. This is insane to me. Like I just looked it up. Like this is a visualization from like Reddit or something. I don't know how accurate it is, but it like it looks like Earth is covered in satellites, and yet we don't really see any of this or much of it, right? Like sometimes like I'll see like you know Elon Musk's Starlink satellites, which they kind of like travel in a line, but like this is crazy. Like no one's talking about space traffic.
Yeah.
I
You know,
just thought that was kind of cool.
yeah. And oh, we lost Goldie. Okay. The Bermuda got you. But you know what? Yeah, I definitely could talk about that. And I think that could actually be maybe, I don't want to speak too soon, one of our less morbid conversations, but maybe not, depending on like the future of GNSS and like space debris and like all of the space garbage. So, which could, depending on how we want to like dispose of some of these things. Even like astronauts traveling in space who could be like caught up in some of the space equipment, could be terrifying. Anyways, we're not going to get into that now, but great topic. Thank you so much for the suggestion, Minor. And it's going to go on the list. It's going on the list, guys. GNSS. Next up, we have Minor again with another super chat. Isn't methane release associated with the Port Royal disaster? Ooh, interesting. Okay, so the Port Royal disaster, I think I actually don't remember, but I think it was mostly related to like an earthquake, maybe. Let me look it up real quick.
Yeah, it was an earthquake and a tsunami. So you're 100% correct on that.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, this is ancient. This is really long ago, 1692. When a
How do you
massive
know these things off the top of your head? Like, I literally had to look up the Port Royal disaster.
Google.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that what you said? No, it just I don't know. It just came up in research once. But it was, yeah, I actually don't know. I would have to look more into this to see if there was any sort of methane release that was associated as a result of the earthquake. But yeah, again, like because this is so long ago, it's hard to actually know what happened just because like based on documentation and like the available instruments at the time to understand how some of these things, like what actually happened. It's hard to make these accurate, conclusions.
So basically, you're saying it was aliens.
It was aliens or laser cheese. One or the
Lasers for cheese or aliens. Okay.
Yeah. Next we have a super chat from Neo that says, "This has been entertaining." Thank you. Well, I hope it was also educational, but I'm glad it was entertaining. That's very good to hear. So I'm glad we could help entertain. Next up, we have Quills, who says, "There is no greater chart than the cheese chart theory. Let's learn about string cheese theory." There's actually string theory. So like first of all, thanks for the super chat. I don't know if I've heard about the string cheese theory. It might actually be a thing. I mean, the Swiss cheese theory is a thing, or the Swiss cheese model. I haven't heard of the string cheese theory, but there is string theory.
You've literally had cheese strings as a child.
I have, yes.
Cheese strings, you make my mouth sing. Do you remember that commercial?
No.
Oh my gosh, that's probably like a 90s commercial.
Sorry, cheese strings are like, we know it's a Canadian snack, but I'm like, I would like, do Americans also have it? Like, did you guys have cheese strings as a snack? Like, is that a...
We literally had a snack called cheese strings.
Like, I want to know if this was like a Canadian thing or if like we stole it from the Americans. Okay, Navajo says yes.
Yes, okay. There you go.
Oh, and Newton says yes. Okay. So I guess we stole it from the Americans. But yeah, so people know what cheese string is. That's good. Sometimes you don't know, like some of these cultural differences can like be so nuanced sometimes.
Yeah, ketchup chips. Ketchup chips is one.
Yeah, ketchup chips. Oh, so good. So delicious.
I know, like literally my favorite chip flavor is ketchup chips.
So good. Okay. Next up, we have William. Time to lean vortex.
I think he means tunnel.
Yeah, maybe.
Time tunnel vortex. Maybe that could be. Oh, so this is for the unknown factors. So when you're asking like, what could be some of the, give me your best theories about the unknown factors.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Time tunnel vortex. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, maybe, it could be. Cue the creepy, scary music. It's definitely like a common scientific trope that could depict like, time travel or like distortions in space-time. And, if it exists within the Bermuda Triangle, then, it could be a factor. Thanks for the comment, William. Next up, we have Miner, who says, "Rose is our favorite Swiss cheese model." I'm glad, at least out of all of the Swiss cheese models, I'm glad that I'm one of the favorites. Thank you for the comment. Next up, we have Citizen Vigilante, who says, "Zootnado would be terrifying and a good movie." Goldie, would you like to comment on this one?
No.
No. I think it would be a very terrifying movie.
No, just you can just say like it would be a horror show. It would be a horror movie.
It would be a horror movie.
That's about it. That's all we're gonna say on that.
Okay. And we have our last, but certainly not least, super chat of the evening from Stephen, who says the evolution of radio stations, Lauren, and GPS. Okay,
Yes,
all great topics.
future topics. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So Lauren is like long range navigation. So yeah, if folks are interested in like this navigation type stuff, yeah, let's do it.
I think all these topics are super cool. Even like the radio station one, right?
Yeah. So I really like that. I've also been thinking about like even just covering the electromagnetic spectrum in more details and like going from radio rays all the way to gamma rays.
Yeah, gamma ray.
And just talking about that and like, you know, what all of that means. And visible light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, but it's like in such a tiny, tiny sliver. And like just to think that everything, sorry, this is going a little bit beyond topic right now, but everything that we see is within this like tiny sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum, which is the visible light section. And then there's like this massive range within the spectrum that like we have no idea what it looks like and we don't see. So it's just like, you know, what actually exists in the universe that is there. But
new fear unlocked. Great. Thank you. So literally, so what you're saying is that there could be a demon right here that I
just can't see it
because my eyes are only seeing a tiny part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Thank you. New fear unlocked, guys. There you go. Rose, why is it that every single time you bring up a topic, you find a way of making it absolutely terrifying?
You know why? Because science is wild.
That's true. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. That's why. But thank you guys all for your super chats and for your comments. I had so much fun tonight. I hope you guys all learned something. Goldie, did you have fun?
I had a lot of fun, and I'm gonna head out before you do your closing. But I had a lot of fun. This was fantastic, and I can't wait for your next live stream. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me as your sort of sidekick.
Yeah,
and I learned a lot. You know, it was very interesting, and I'm always appreciative because you know you take these very sort of difficult concepts and you break it down into like easy you know, easy pieces. And I think your graphics tonight were amazing, and I really enjoyed the you know companion pack that you made for the Bermuda Triangle. So thank you so much, guys. I'm gonna head out before Rose does her closing, but I will see you all tomorrow, probably a little bit earlier than usual because there is a lot of crazy news. So I'll see you all tomorrow on my channel. Anyways, bye, Rose. I'll see you later.
Hi, Goldie. Thank you so much. And thank you guys all for being here and for your comments and for your super chats. I had so much fun. And put on your seatbelt because we are hopping back on our magic school plane. We will not be one of the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. So we will be coming back safely and soundly. So, you know, no need to worry, guys. And I will see you all in the next.